Welcome back, and thank you for tuning into Cheating Tales Lab. We appreciate every single one of you. We'd love to know what part of the world are you watching from right now. Let us know in the comments. Now, let's dive into today's story. The rhythmic splash of water and excited chatter of children filled the air as Kyle Joyce watched his daughter Emma execute a perfect butterfly stroke across the pool. His trained eye caught the slight adjustment needed in her shoulder rotation, but pride swelled in his chest at her determination. At 11, she was already showing the dedication that would take her far in competitive swimming. His phone buzzed with a message from his wife. "Sorry, can't make it to practice again. Emergency meeting with Saul about the Richardson development." "Don't wait up." Kyle's jaw tightened imperceptibly as he deleted the message. Third missed practice this week. He glanced at Emma, grateful she was too focused on her training to check if her mother had arrived. "Beautiful form, Emma," Coach Sally Daniel called out. "Just remember to keep those shoulders loose on the rotation." Later that evening, at his pediatric physical therapy clinic, Kyle worked with 6-year-old Marcus, who was making remarkable progress after a severe car accident. "That's it, buddy," Kyle encouraged, supporting the boy's weight as he took tentative steps. "You're doing great." Faith Bruce, his clinic manager, appeared in the doorway. "Kyle, got a minute?" Corporate sent another email about the buyout offer. "After I finish with Marcus," Kyle replied, maintaining his focus on the child's progress. Marcus's mother watched anxiously from her chair, and Kyle gave her a reassuring smile. 20 minutes later, in his office, Faith handed him the printed email. "They're getting aggressive, threatening to open a competing clinic 2 blocks away if you don't sell." Kyle scanned the document, his expression hardening. They'd turn this into an assembly line. 15-minute sessions, standardized treatment plans, insurance-dictated care. "Everything I've fought against." "We both know what happens to kids like Marcus under corporate care," Faith agreed, leaning against his desk. "But they're offering serious money, Kyle." "Money isn't everything." He set the paper aside. "How's the Williams case progressing?" Faith started to respond when Kyle's phone lit up with a text from Emma. "Dad, I qualified for states." "Where's Mom?" Kyle's stomach clenched. Marilyn had promised to be there for this meet. He'd reminded her 3 times this morning. "Everything okay?" Faith asked, noting his expression. Marilyn missed Emma's qualifying meet. Kyle ran a hand through his hair. "Another emergency with Saul Wiley." Faith's face remained carefully neutral. "The new boss who's been keeping her late every night?" "The same." Kyle pulled up his calendar. "She's missed 8 of Emma's events since he took over 2 months ago." "People talk, you know," Faith said carefully. "At the real estate office." Kyle looked up sharply. "What kind of talk?" "Just observations. Late meetings, closed doors. The way he looks at her in public." Faith hesitated. "And the way she lets him." The first concrete piece of evidence came on a Tuesday afternoon. Faith was leaving a client lunch when she spotted Marilyn's distinctive red Tesla parked at the Westbrook Hotel at 2 p.m. during what was supposed to be a board meeting at her office. Faith's hand shook slightly as she snapped a photo. She'd known Kyle since college, watched him build his practice from nothing, seen his dedication to every child who came through his doors. He didn't deserve this. Later that week, Emma burst into Kyle's office after school, her backpack still on. "Dad, you'll never guess who I saw today." Kyle looked up from his paperwork. "Who's that?" "Sweetheart, Mom and Uncle Saul. They were having lunch at Castellano's when I walked by with Jenny after early dismissal." Emma dropped into a chair. "Mom looked really surprised to see me. Like, really surprised. She said they were having a work lunch, but..." She frowned. "She didn't know we had early dismissal today?" Kyle kept his expression neutral. "Did she say anything else?" "No, she just kept saying it was a work thing." "But Dad..." Emma lowered her voice. Uncle Saul had his hand on her arm. Like, not in a work way. That night, after Emma was asleep, Kyle sat in his home office reviewing credit card statements. The charges jumped out at him. La Pearl Boutique, $430. The Westbrook Hotel, $289. The Grand Marina Hotel, $315. All on days he'd been working late at the clinic. His phone buzzed with a text from Faith. "Check your email. Security footage from last week." I'm sorry. The video was grainy but clear enough. Marilyn entering Saul's office at 9:47 p.m., leaving at 1:23 a.m., her hair disheveled, his tie loose. Kyle's hands didn't shake as he downloaded and saved the file. His voice was steady when he called his lawyer the next morning to schedule a consultation. The final confirmation came through Emma, ironically. She'd borrowed Marilyn's iPad for a school project when the messages started popping up. Last night was amazing. Can't wait to see you again. S. Missing your touch already. These meetings are torture when I can't have you. S. Soon, baby. Kyle's working late again Thursday. The usual place? M. Emma, confused and disturbed, brought the iPad to her father. Kyle took screenshots, his heart breaking for his daughter even as his resolve hardened. The initial confrontation happened on a Sunday evening. Emma was at a sleepover, and Kyle had spent the day gathering his evidence and consulting with his lawyer. We need to talk about Saul, Kyle said as Marilyn scrolled through her phone on the couch. She didn't look up. What about him? About your affair with him. Now she looked up, her face a mask of practiced innocence that quickly shifted to defensive anger. It was one mistake, Kyle. One drunken mistake that meant nothing. Really? Kyle's voice was ice. One mistake that's been happening for months. In multiple hotels? Color drained from Marilyn's face. You've been spying on me? No, you've been careless. And Emma saw you. She's just a child. She doesn't understand. She understands enough. Kyle pulled out his phone. Want to explain these messages? Or the hotel charges? Or maybe the security footage? Marilyn's mask cracked. You sanctimonious bastard. You think you're so perfect with your little charity clinic and your holier-than-thou attitude about patient care. At least Saul understands ambition. Ambition? Kyle's laugh was cold. Is that what you call sleeping your way up the corporate ladder? You're just jealous because I make real money while you play savior to crippled kids. The words hung in the air like poison. Get out, Kyle said quietly. Now. This is my house too. The house I bought before we married? With my inheritance? That house. Kyle's smile was razor sharp. You have 30 minutes to pack a bag. Then I'm changing the locks. That's when Alberta Merritt, Marilyn's mother, launched her attack. She'd arrived unannounced, clearly summoned by a crying phone call from Marilyn. How dare you throw my daughter out? Alberta shrieked, bursting into the house. After all she's sacrificed for you, working those long hours to support your little vanity project of a clinic. Kyle stood his ground. Your daughter is having an affair with her boss. She's neglected Emma for months, and now she's trying to paint herself as the victim, because she is. Alberta advanced on him. If you'd been a proper husband, given her the attention she deserved, the attention she deserves? Kyle's voice rose slightly. Like the attention she gives Emma? When was the last time she attended a swim meet? A parent-teacher conference? Hell, when was the last time she made dinner for her daughter? Don't you dare question her mothering. Alberta spat. Emma would choose her over you any day. Marilyn, who had been watching the exchange with calculated tears, suddenly smiled. It was an ugly expression that revealed her true nature. She's right, Marilyn said coldly. I'm her mother. I have money, influence, connections. What do you have? A failing clinic and a hero complex? No judge will side with you. We'll see about that, Kyle replied calmly. Now get out of my house before I call the police. The final betrayal came from Drew O'Connor, Kyle's friend of 15 years. They met for coffee at Drew's insistence. I need to tell you something, Drew said, staring into his cup. I've known about Marilyn and Saul for months. Kyle's face remained impassive. And you didn't think to tell me? I was trying to protect you, man. You've got so much on your plate with the clinic and Emma. Protect me? Kyle's voice was deadly quiet. By watching my wife make a fool of me? By letting my daughter get hurt? It's not that simple. Actually, it is. Kyle stood up. You chose sides, Drew. You chose wrong. As he walked out of the coffee shop, his phone buzzed with messages from mutual friends. They'd heard Marilyn's version. Kyle was controlling, emotionally unavailable, married to his work. They believed her. Kyle blocked their numbers one by one, his resolve strengthening with each deletion. He had all the evidence he needed. Now it was time to plan his next move. Emma was waiting when he got home, curled up on the couch with her swim team hoodie. "Dad?" Her voice was small. "Is Mom coming back?" Kyle sat beside her, pulling her close. "Not right now, sweetheart. But I promise you, I'm not going anywhere. We're going to get through this together." "I know, Dad." Emma hugged him tight. "I saw the messages on her iPad. I'm not stupid. She chose him over us, didn't she?" Kyle's heart broke and reformed, stronger and more determined. "Some people make bad choices, Em. But that's on them, not us. Want to help me make dinner?" As they moved to the kitchen, Kyle's phone lit up with a text from Faith. "Just heard what happened. Need anything?" He looked at Emma, already pulling ingredients from the fridge, and typed back, "Just your friendship." For now, the pieces were in place. Marilyn had shown her true colors. Now it was time to make her face the consequences of her choices. But first, he had a daughter to take care of and a clinic to protect. Kyle Joyce might be just a physical therapist in Marilyn's eyes, but he was about to show her exactly what kind of man she'd underestimated. The morning after throwing Marilyn out, Kyle sat in his office reviewing financial statements when Faith knocked on his door. "You need to see this," she said, placing a business card on his desk. "Dr. Rachel Lake, Saul Wiley's wife." Kyle studied the card. "Pediatrician at Eastbrook Children's Hospital. She called the clinic asking to meet you. Says it's personal, not professional." Faith lowered her voice. "She knows, Kyle." The meeting was arranged at a small coffee shop across town. Rachel Lake proved to be a sharp-featured woman with intelligent eyes and a no-nonsense demeanor. She got straight to the point. "How long have you known?" she asked, stirring her untouched coffee. "About 2 months. You? Suspected for 6. Rachel's smile was bitter. "Saul's not as clever as he thinks. This is his pattern. Young executives, usually married. Makes them feel special, powerful, until he discards them." Kyle leaned forward. "Tell me more." 2 previous affairs with employees. Both ended in NDAs and generous severance packages. Rachel pulled out a manila envelope. "The companies buried it to avoid scandal. But I kept copies." "Why show me this?" "Because this time he picked the wrong target." Rachel's eyes hardened. "Your wife may be willing to destroy her family for him, but I'm done protecting his reputation." Their alliance formed over the next hour. Rachel had resources, connections, and 20 years of documented evidence. Kyle had Faith's security footage and Emma's iPad messages. "There's someone else you should meet," Kyle said, making a call. "Heidi Carey, my lawyer." Heidi arrived 20 minutes later, a force of nature in a tailored suit. "Dr. Lake, your husband handled my daughter's physical therapy 5 years ago," she explained, sitting down. "Best care she ever received. That's why I'm handling both your cases pro bono." "Both cases?" Rachel asked. "Divorce and corporate malfeasance." Heidi's smile was predatory. "Kyle's evidence plus your documentation? We're going to destroy them." Back at the clinic, Faith compiled everything. Security footage, emails, witness statements from office staff who'd seen Marilyn and Saul's meetings. Sally Daniel called. Faith mentioned. Organizing files. Emma's swim coach? She's documented every meet Marilyn's missed, every practice she skipped. Says she'll testify if needed. Kyle nodded, reviewing the growing evidence. "They thought I'd just roll over and take it. That I'd be too afraid of losing Emma to fight back. They don't know you very well, do they?" Faith's hand brushed his shoulder briefly. "No," Kyle agreed. "They really don't." The security system installation took half a day. Every entrance covered, the technician confirmed. Audio and video recording, motion sensors, remote monitoring. Everything uploads automatically to secure cloud storage. Kyle handed him a check. "Perfect." Dr. Eileen Castro's child psychology practice came highly recommended. She met with Emma while Kyle waited outside. "She's angry," Dr. Castro reported afterward. "Not at you. At her mother's betrayal. She feels abandoned, replaced." These sessions will help document the emotional impact. "How's she really doing?" Kyle asked, paternal concern breaking through his calculated demeanor. "She's resilient. Having your stable presence helps enormously." Dr. Castro's expression turned professional. I'm documenting everything for the custody hearing. Marilyn's behavior patterns, Emma's emotional state, your consistent involvement. The court will have a clear picture. That afternoon, Kyle met with his financial advisor. Half the joint assets were transferred to protected accounts, completely legal, given the circumstances. The advisor had worked with enough divorce cases to know the drill. She'll try to drain the accounts when she realizes what's happening, he warned. Let her try, Kyle replied. Everything's documented. Rachel's investigation into Saul's business practices yielded gold. Look at these property deals, she said during their next meeting. Ethical violations everywhere. Insider trading, kickbacks, manipulated valuations. He's been using his affairs to keep people quiet. And Marilyn? Complicit. Rachel's disgust was evident. She's been helping him hide the paperwork. That's why he targeted her. He needed someone in real estate who'd play along. Kyle maintained meticulous records of his parenting duties. Every school pickup, every meal prepared, every homework session helped. Emma's activities filled his calendar. Swim practice, doctor appointments, tutoring. Marilyn's attempts at gaslighting grew more frequent. She'd change plans last minute, then deny they'd ever been made. Each incident was recorded, documented, timed. I told you I'd take Emma this weekend, she'd insist. No, you said next weekend, Kyle would reply calmly, recording everything. You're trying to turn her against me. You're doing that yourself, Marilyn. Alberta proved to be a problem. She showed up unannounced one afternoon while Emma was doing homework. I'm taking my granddaughter shopping, she announced, barging in. No, you're not, Kyle said firmly. You don't have permission to take her anywhere. I don't need permission. I'm her grandmother. You need my permission. Kyle's voice was steel. And after your little performance at dinner, you're not getting it. How dare you? The security system is recording, Alberta. Every word, every action. Keep that in mind. She left in a fury, but the incident was preserved. Another piece of evidence for the custody hearing. The invitation arrived on expensive cardstock. Marilyn's 37th birthday celebration at Le Maison, the city's most exclusive hotel. Quite a guest list, Rachel remarked, reviewing the names. Board members, social climbers, everyone who's been enabling their affair. She's gathering her witnesses. Sources say she's planning some kind of announcement, Heidi added, painting herself as the victim of a loveless marriage, forced to find happiness elsewhere. Kyle's laugh was cold. Is that her play? Not just hers. Rachel's expression was grim. Saul's planning to announce our divorce. He'll blame my emotional instability, classic gaslighting. Make it seem like I drove him to cheat. Perfect timing, Heidi said. Everything's ready. HR department, real estate board, family court. All the evidence packages are prepared. Emma's spending that weekend with your parents? Rachel confirmed. Kyle nodded. They'll keep her safe while we finish this. The final pieces fell into place. Process servers were arranged, disguised as hotel staff. Key witnesses were positioned. Everything was documented, time-stamped, legally bulletproof. You realize there's no going back from this, Faith said quietly as they reviewed the final preparations. Kyle thought of Emma's face when she saw those messages. Thought of Marilyn's cruel words, her threats about custody. Thought of every missed meet, every broken promise, every lie. Good, he replied. That's exactly what I want. Rachel squeezed his shoulder. They thought we'd be easy targets. The devoted father too afraid of losing his daughter to fight. The doctor's wife too concerned with appearances to make a scene. Their mistake, Kyle said simply. The trap was set. Everything was in place. Now they just had to wait for Marilyn's birthday party and watch their carefully orchestrated plan unfold. As Kyle tucked Emma in that night before she left for his parents' house, she hugged him tight. You're not letting Mom take me away, are you, Dad? Never, he promised. Some battles are worth fighting. You're worth every single one. He closed her door and checked his phone. Messages from Heidi, Rachel, and Faith confirmed everything was ready. In 2 days, Marilyn and Saul would learn exactly what happened when they underestimated the wrong people. Kyle smiled, thinking of Emma's words from months ago. I'm not stupid. She chose him over us. Well, now they'd all face the consequences of that choice. The party invitations sat on his desk, mocking in their elegance. Soon, that expensive cardstock would be the least of Marilyn's concerns. Kyle had built his career helping children overcome seemingly impossible challenges. Now he'd use that same patience, that same strategic thinking, to protect his daughter and destroy those who tried to hurt her. Let them think he was weak. Let them believe their lies. The trap was set, and this time, there would be no escape. Lou Maison's grand ballroom sparkled with expensive decorations and even more expensive guests. Marilyn held court near the champagne fountain, wearing a designer dress that probably cost more than most people's monthly salary. Saul Wiley stood nearby, his proprietary smile barely disguising his smugness. "And here's to my beautiful daughter," Alberta Merritt's voice carried across the room as she raised her glass. "Who showed such strength in the face of neglect and isolation." From their observation point in the hotel lobby, Kyle and Rachel watched the security feed on Faith's tablet. "Your mother-in-law has quite the imagination," Rachel remarked dryly. "Oh, she's just warming up," Kyle replied, checking his watch. "Ready?" Rachel smoothed her elegant black dress. "Born ready." Inside, Alberta continued her performance. "A mother's love is sacred. When Marilyn came to me, devastated by years of emotional abandonment, the ballroom doors opened. Heads turned as Kyle and Rachel made their calculated entrance. Marilyn's champagne glass froze halfway to her lips. "Now," Kyle spoke quietly into his earpiece. The servers, carefully selected process servers in disguise, moved with practiced precision. 3 approached Marilyn simultaneously. Another 2 converged on Saul. Papers were served with quiet professionalism. "What is this?" Marilyn's voice rose shrilly as she stared at the documents. "You dare crash my party, Mrs. Joyce," one server interrupted politely. "You've been served with divorce papers, a custody suit, and a corporate ethics violation notice." Saul's face purpled as he received his own stack. "This is ridiculous. I'll have your jobs for." "Mr. Wiley," another server continued calmly, "you've been served with divorce papers, a corporate ethics investigation notice, and documentation of workplace harassment violations." Kyle's team moved efficiently through the crowd. The HR representative received detailed documentation of the affair and its impact on workplace dynamics. Board members were handed evidence of ethical violations. The family court mediator received comprehensive documentation of Marilyn's parental neglect. Phones emerged from pockets and purses, recording everything. Marilyn's carefully maintained mask cracked completely. "You bastard!" she shrieked at Kyle. "You planned this? At my birthday party?" "Planned what?" Kyle's voice carried clearly. "I'm just delivering truth to your carefully selected audience." Saul advanced menacingly toward Kyle. "You think you can humiliate us like this?" "Step back, Mr. Wiley," Kyle said evenly as multiple phones recorded. "You wouldn't want to add assault charges to your problems." "I'll destroy you," Saul snarled, fists clenched. "Both of you. I'll make sure you never work in this city again." Threatening a witness, Rachel noted calmly. "On camera." "Excellent choice." Alberta tried salvaging the situation. "How dare you disrupt this celebration? After everything Marilyn's suffer." "Yes," Kyle cut in. "Let's talk about suffering. About missed swim meets and broken promises. About hotel rooms and secret messages. About using corporate resources to hide affairs." The crowd murmured, papers rustling as people read the evidence. "You're lying." Marilyn's voice cracked. "He's lying. I'm a good mother." "The records say otherwise," Kyle replied. "Every missed event, every broken promise, every time you chose your affair over our daughter. It's all documented." The ballroom had become very quiet except for the sound of papers being reviewed and phones recording. "Get out," Marilyn screamed. "Get out of my party." "Your party?" Kyle smiled coldly. "I think it just became a business meeting. You might want to start explaining those property deals to your board members." The real estate board's ethics investigation moved with unusual speed, perhaps motivated by the viral videos of Saul's threatening behavior at the party. Previous NDAs have surfaced, Heidi reported during their strategy meeting. 2 former employees came forward after seeing the party footage. "Turns out money can't quite buy silence forever, especially when they smell blood in the water," Rachel added with satisfaction. The custody hearing was equally decisive. Alberta's recorded threats from the security system played clearly for the judge. "I'll take that child whether you like it or not." Her voice rang through the courtroom. "You have no right to keep her from us." Kyle's documented involvement in Emma's life created a stark contrast. Every swim meet attended, every doctor's appointment managed, every school event supported. While Marilyn's absences mounted, Dr. Castro's professional testimony proved devastating. Emma exhibits clear signs of emotional abandonment from her mother, compounded by the discovery of the affair. Mrs. Joyce's pattern of choosing her relationship with Mr. Wiley over her daughter's needs has caused significant trauma. Drew's attempt to defend Marilyn backfired spectacularly when Kyle's lawyer cross-examined him. "So you knew about the affair for months?" "I was trying to protect." "Yes or no, Mr. O'Connor? Did you knowingly help conceal this situation?"
Yes.
While watching Emma suffer, Drew's silence spoke volumes. The corporate investigation revealed deeper corruption than anyone expected. Marilyn's financial misconduct with company resources became impossible to ignore. She used corporate accounts to book hotel rooms, the forensic accountant testified, falsified expense reports to hide gifts, used company cars for personal meetings. Kyle's clinic received an unexpected surge of support when the story broke. Former patients' families rallied around him, sharing stories of his dedication and care. "He spent extra hours with my son," one mother told the local news. "Never rushed us, never compromised care for profit." And they wanted to force him out? Shame on them. The corporate healthcare provider quietly withdrew their buyout attempt. The judge's ruling was unequivocal. Primary custody is awarded to Kyle Joyce. Mrs. Joyce will have supervised visitation only, pending completion of parenting classes and counseling. Emma's response was to hug her father tightly. "Can we get ice cream?" Kyle laughed, his first genuine laugh in months. "Absolutely." The state swimming championship became Emma's moment of triumph. Kyle and Faith cheered from the stands as she touched the wall first, setting a new personal record. "That's my girl," Kyle said proudly. Faith's hand found his. "She's amazing."
Like her father.
Saul's firing made headlines, especially after the harassment suits went public. Marilyn lost her executive position the same day, forced to accept a lower-level position at a smaller firm in another city. Alberta's attempts to contact Emma were firmly blocked. The restraining order is quite clear. Kyle told the security guard at Emma's school. No unsupervised contact. The partnership between Kyle's clinic and Rachel's pediatric practice created an innovative new therapy program. "We're helping twice as many kids now," Rachel noted during their opening celebration. Some good came from all this. Emma's 12th birthday party filled Kyle's backyard with real friends, people who had stood by them through everything. Sally Daniel brought the swim team. Faith organized games. Rachel's children mixed easily with Emma's school friends. A package arrived that morning, Marilyn's attempt at manipulation. An expensive gift with a tearful card about healing our family. "What should we do with it?" Emma asked. Kyle smiled. "I was thinking the children's hospital could use it more." Emma hugged him. "Good call, Dad." Later, as Kyle cleaned up after the party, Faith helped gather decorations. Emma mentioned wanting to visit the coast this summer, she said casually. "She loves the beach." Kyle looked at her thoughtfully. "Would you like to join us?" Faith's smile was answer enough. The party aftermath sparkled with possibility, not just of new beginnings, but of victories well-earned and battles correctly fought. Kyle had protected what mattered most, destroyed those who threatened it, and emerged stronger. Sometimes the best revenge wasn't just success. It was success built on unwavering principle and patient strength. As he watched Faith and Emma laughing together over the last piece of birthday cake, Kyle knew he'd chosen exactly the right path. "Dad," Emma called. "Faith's never been surfing. Can we teach her this summer?" Kyle met Faith's eyes across the room. "I think that's an excellent idea." The future stretched bright before them, free from manipulation and lies. They'd earned every bit of it. Epilogue. 5 years later. A warm spring breeze carried the scent of blooming roses through Kyle's expanded clinic courtyard. The therapeutic garden, a joint project with Rachel's pediatric practice, buzzed with activity as children worked on their motor skills through gardening. Faith watched from their shared office as Kyle guided a young patient through balance exercises. After 5 years of marriage, she still admired his unwavering dedication to his patients. Their wedding had been small but joyful, with 16-year-old Emma as maid of honor and Rachel's children in the wedding party. "Dad's doing the thing again," Emma commented, joining Faith at the window. Fresh from swim practice, she'd grown into a striking young woman, recently accepted to Stanford on a swimming scholarship. "The thing?" Faith smiled, knowing exactly what Emma meant. "Where he spends extra time with the kids who remind him of me at that age." Emma's own smile was understanding. He never could resist helping the determined ones. The clinic had become a model for ethical pediatric care, featured in medical journals and studied by healthcare providers nationwide. The corporate buyout attempt felt like ancient history, especially after their innovative therapy program garnered national attention. Rachel entered, carrying fresh coffee. At 47, she'd found her own happiness, recently engaged to a fellow pediatrician who understood her dedication to her patients. "Quarterly numbers are in," she announced. "Our joint practice is outperforming every corporate healthcare center in the state." Success through integrity, Faith quoted their unofficial motto. "How's the new therapy wing coming along?" "On schedule. The sensory garden should be ready for summer sessions." Rachel paused, checking her phone. "Oh, you'll love this. Guess who's trying to rebuild her reputation again?" Faith raised an eyebrow. "Marilyn?" Posted another heartfelt apology on social media. Claims she's grown and learned from her mistakes. Rachel's tone dripped sarcasm. "The comments are not kind." 5 years hadn't been gentle to Marilyn Joyce, formerly Wiley. After losing her executive position, she'd bounced between smaller firms, her reputation following her like a shadow. Her supervised visitation with Emma had ended when Emma turned 14 and firmly refused further contact. "She sent another birthday card last week," Emma mentioned casually. "Dad and I donated it to the Children's Hospital, like always." Saul Wiley's fall had been even more spectacular. The harassment suits had multiplied once victims realized they weren't alone. His legal fees had drained his savings, and his attempts to rebuild his career were consistently thwarted by his own documented behavior. He tried applying for a position at Western Real Estate, Rachel shared. They Googled his name and ended the interview in 5 minutes. The last they'd heard, Saul and Marilyn had tried reconnecting, a desperate attempt to reclaim their former glory. It had ended predictably, with Saul being caught with another younger executive and Marilyn facing fresh humiliation. Alberta Merritt had never accepted her reduced circumstances. Her attempts to contact Emma through social media had earned her a restraining order extension. Now she spent her time writing bitter blog posts about parental alienation that nobody read. "Remember Drew?" Emma asked suddenly. "He came into the coffee shop yesterday, tried to make small talk about old times. How's he doing?" Faith asked, though she knew the story. "Working entry-level sales at some startup. Turns out being known as the guy who helped cover up workplace harassment isn't great for your career." Emma shrugged. "He asked about Mom. Actually, I told him I already had all the parents I needed." Faith hugged her stepdaughter, heart swelling. Their relationship had grown naturally, built on respect and genuine care rather than forced connections. The therapy garden continued flourishing, much like their blended family. Kyle's patient philosophy had transformed into a comprehensive treatment approach that prioritized long-term care over quick profits. The waiting list for their clinic grew longer each month. "Hey." Kyle entered the office, finished with his patient. "What's everyone doing in here?" "Watching you work your magic," Faith replied, accepting his quick kiss. "And sharing news. Stanford sent Emma's housing information." "Already?" Kyle looked at his daughter proudly. "Seems like yesterday you were that determined 11-year-old who wouldn't give up on her butterfly stroke." "Well, someone taught me about persistence," Emma smiled. "And integrity. And choosing the right battles." Rachel checked her watch. "Speaking of battles, we should head to the board meeting. They're voting on implementing our therapy program across the hospital network." As they gathered their materials, Kyle paused to look around his office. Photos tracked their family's growth. Emma's state championships, his wedding to Faith, family vacations, Rachel's engagement party, clinic expansions, graduation ceremonies. Each image represented a victory built on principle rather than compromise. "Coming to dinner tonight?" he asked Rachel. "The kids want to hear more stories about their favorite aunt's medical school adventures." "Wouldn't miss it," Rachel replied. "Someone needs to balance out all these swimming stories." They walked together through the therapy garden, passing children who were healing and growing stronger every day. The scent of roses followed them, a reminder of how beauty could flourish in unexpected places. Later that evening, their home filled with laughter as their extended family gathered for their traditional weekly dinner. Kyle watched Emma demonstrating proper swimming technique to Rachel's youngest, while Faith and Rachel debated the merits of different therapy approaches. His phone buzzed, another desperate message from Marilyn, sent through a mutual acquaintance. Something about regret and second chances. Kyle deleted it without reading further. Some chapters were better left closed. "Dad," Emma called. "Tell them about the time you and Faith got lost trying to find that surfing spot." Kyle joined his family, leaving thoughts of the past behind. They built something beautiful from the ashes of betrayal, a testament to the power of choosing right over easy, integrity over compromise. Success, they learned, wasn't just about winning. It was about winning on your own terms, staying true to your principles even when the easy path beckoned. Their happiness wasn't revenge. It was justice, earned through unwavering strength and patient determination. The roses in their garden bloomed stronger each year, their roots deep and stable, just like their family, built on trust, nourished by love, and strengthened by the storms they'd weathered together. Faith caught his eye across the room, her smile saying everything words couldn't. They'd chosen their paths, fought their battles, and emerged stronger. Together. And that, Kyle reflected as he looked at his thriving family, was the greatest victory of all.
This is where our story comes to an end. Share your thoughts in the comment section. Thanks for your time. If you enjoy the story, please subscribe to this channel. Click on the video you see on the screen, and I will see you there.
I always felt connected to the rhythms of rural life. The changing seasons, the smell of freshly tilled soil, and the hum of the tractor were constants for me. But as I got older, I became curious about the world beyond our farm. Stories of distant cities and foreign lands sparked a desire for more than our small town could offer. Our life was simple, rooted in hard work. We weren't struggling, but luxury was a foreign concept. My parents were content, but I dreamed of exploring the world. I knew I needed to make a bold move to break free from the farm. Growing up on a farm taught me that if I wanted more than occasional trips to the local store, I'd have to take drastic action. We weren't destitute, but far from comfortable. By age 7, I was already hauling and stacking hay bales. After high school, despite my parents' wishes, my best friend Hal and I enlisted in the Marines. We spent 4 years stationed in South Korea and Japan. Though we were advised to stick to American-friendly spots, Hal and I explored as much as we could, knowing this might be our only chance to see the world. I spent half my money on fun and sent the rest home. Our service was mostly uneventful, filled with sentry duty and occasional misadventures. By the time we were discharged, everyone called me Army instead of Calvin Bostic, a nickname that stuck when I returned home, though people misunderstood its origin. Back in Belford, job options were limited to farming and construction. I chose construction, working hard all day and still having energy to hang out with friends in the evenings. I met Stacy at Higgins' restaurant, and it was love at first sight. After many attempts, she finally agreed to go out with me, and we got married 9 months later. At 24, Stacy and I were happy, but knew we needed to save money before starting a family. My dad advised me to seek better job opportunities, and he was right. We could barely cover our expenses. After 2 years of marriage, we had little savings and lived paycheck to paycheck. The nearby cities of Somerville and Kensington offered more job opportunities, and we hoped to improve our situation one day. One afternoon, Stacy excitedly shared news about a new gym opening in Kensington with better pay. She was eager to apply and hoped the job would help us save for a family. After a successful interview, Stacy started working at Stokes Fitness Palace. Initially, she dressed conservatively, but over time, her outfits became more revealing, which made me uncomfortable. However, when I visited the gym, I saw that her co-workers dressed similarly, which eased my concerns. Her job seemed to boost her confidence, and her libido increased, leading to wild nights together. She credited her workouts and healthier lifestyle for the change, and I was happy with the new energy in our relationship. One Friday, Stacy mentioned a promotion at the gym and asked me to attend a special event for spouses. Though I was skeptical, I agreed to go. On the night of the event, I felt uneasy, so I brought Hal along. He lent me a spy pen that could record audio just in case. When we arrived at the gym, Hal wasn't allowed in at first, but I insisted, and we both entered after handing over our phones. Inside, Stacy looked nervous, standing next to her supervisor, Gerald Goliath Jenkins. She was dressed in a skimpy bikini, which shocked me. When I asked what was going on, Goliath smugly explained that he had set up an arm wrestling contest, where the winner would get both a cash prize and a night with Stacy. Though she initially resisted, the money tempted her, and she eventually agreed. Goliath revealed his plan to erase my memory with ketamine after I lost, so I wouldn't remember any of it. Stacy would get the money, and we'd continue our lives as if nothing happened. I realized Goliath had made several mistakes, including underestimating the loyalty of his accomplices and assuming I wouldn't notice being pilled. I knew I had to stay calm and think through my next move. One of the goons claimed to know the right dose to knock me out, but I was done playing along. Forget it. I'm not competing. If Stacy's considering this, she's yours. Do whatever you want with her. I'm leaving, I said coldly. Goliath responded, "You can't leave, Army. A deal's a deal. I promised Stacy you'd compete and forget everything. I don't care anymore. I just want a divorce." Stacy started sobbing at my words. Ignoring her, I added, "If you want me to compete, you'll have to liquidate me afterward." Goliath dismissed my threat, saying, "Let's get started." They marched me into the gym, where the men cheered and catcalled at Stacy's nearly undressed body. I looked for Hal, but he was gone. "Where's Hal?" I asked. "He left on his own," one of the guys lied. I knew Hal wouldn't abandon me willingly, so I figured he was nearby. I needed help, fast. Goliath, hiding his muscles under a light jacket, addressed the crowd, keeping their hopes high. "All right, everyone, this is what we've been waiting for. All 40 of us paid our entry fees and signed the waivers. Stokes Fitness Palace isn't responsible for any injuries. It's a double elimination tournament. Lose twice. And you're out," he continued. "Stacy insisted her husband, Army, gets a shot too. He'll face the top contender. If he loses, the winner takes everything. Agreed?" The men nodded. "Great," Goliath said. "The winner gets $20,000, a trophy, and a night with Stacy. You've all seen her video. The winner's in for the night of his life." The crowd cheered as Stacy flirted with them. Goliath added, "We have official referees from the World Arm Wrestling Federation. Their decisions are final." The matches began, with 2 contests at a time. The gym filled with cheers and groans as the men competed fiercely. I sat in the middle, disgusted, watching my wife allow other men to touch her. Anger boiled inside me. After an hour and a half, the field narrowed to 10 finalists. One of the goons snarled, "You just had to open your mouth. After this, I'm going to knock you up and say you fell down the steps." In the semifinals, Goliath easily won, setting up the final match between him and me. He refused to break, confident I was no challenge. I removed my windbreaker, tied it around my waist, and approached the table. The room went quiet. No one believed I had a chance. They already assumed Stacy would be Goliath's prize. I asked, "Where's the $40,000 prize money? I want to see it." Goliath taunted, "Why do you care? You're not going to win." "I still want to see it," I replied. The goons fetched the locked box, and the referees confirmed the money was there. I asked referee Justin Albright to hold on to it and ensure I could leave alive. Goliath smirked. "You'll leave, don't worry." His look told me otherwise. I suspected his goons were waiting outside for me. Satisfied, I said, "I'm only here for the money. I don't care about her anymore. I'm tempted to leave her here, win or lose." Stacy shot me a furious look. "Enough talk. Let's get this over with," Goliath said. Stacy kissed him passionately, fueling my anger. When she tried to kiss me, I stopped her. "Don't touch me, Stacy. You're nothing but a cheating witch. If I had my way, I'd divorce you right now. Get behind me. I can't stand the sight of you." Stacy started crying as the crowd gasped. The referees seemed uneasy, and I hoped they realized I wasn't here by choice. Goliath challenged me. "Put your arm up, and let's see who's the real man." The room erupted in support for Goliath. I reluctantly placed my arm on the table, locking hands with Goliath. Referee Kevin Saunders reviewed the rules, and the match began. I pushed with all my strength, but our hands didn't move. Goliath grinned and slowly forced my hand down, winning the first round as the crowd cheered. Taking a deep breath, I reminded everyone, "Best 2 out of 3, and prepared for the next round." Goliath laughed, confident in his victory. "You don't stand a chance." The room cheered for him, fueling my anger even more. Kevin repeated the instructions, and we started again. Goliath smiled, sure of his victory. I used every ounce of strength and leverage, but after about 10 seconds, Goliath's strength wavered. My arm locked in place, and I pushed back with everything I had. The crowd went silent as I slowly forced his hand down. When the referee called the match in my favor, the room fell into stunned silence. Goliath jumped back in disbelief. "No way! That was a fluke! I'm going to crush you now!" he shouted, tearing off his jacket and ripping his shirt to show off his muscles. He slammed his elbow on the table, ready for the final match. I ignored his theatrics, focusing on my breathing to stay calm. Kevin signaled the start, and Goliath threw all his strength into the first push, nearly pinning me. My hand shook, but I held on, waiting for him to tire. Then Stacy's voice called out, "Come on, Goliath! Finish him so I can have you!" Her words enraged me, giving me a new surge of energy. I pushed back, slowly turning the match in my favor. With one final effort, I slammed Goliath's hand onto the padded mat, and the referee declared my victory. I had defeated him 2 out of 3. The room was stunned. Goliath, in disbelief, asked, "How did you do that?" "I'll explain if you meet 2 conditions," I replied. "First, give me the $40,000. Second, let me leave here undamaged." Goliath agreed, and Justin handed me the money, which I zipped into my windbreaker. I addressed the crowd. "I've won fair and square. Whether you like it or not, I'm not to be touched." Goliath confirmed this, though I suspected his goons were waiting for me outside. I explained, "I've worked on farms and in construction all my life, building strength and endurance. In the Marines, I arm wrestled regularly and never lost. My muscles aren't built for short bursts of strength like Goliath's. They're built for endurance. That's how I knock 'em. Now, I'll take my leave." I retrieved my phone and started toward the door, the crowd still in shock. Stacy called out, offering to drive us home and talk, but I responded, "I'll wait outside. Go put some clothes on." She saw it as a chance to talk, but I intended it as a way to buy time to escape. As I reached the front door, I saw Hal's car. He flashed his lights, confirming he was ready. Just then, 3 of Goliath's goons appeared from behind an SUV and started running toward me. But Marines are trained to run, and I outran them, diving into Hal's car. Hal didn't wait. He peeled out, leaving the scene with tires screeching. I managed to escape with my memories intact. "I didn't abandon you in there, Army," Hal quickly assured me. "Some big guys forced me out and tossed my phone on the ground. They said it was a closed event and I wasn't invited, so I waited. I was about to call the police, but since no one else came out, I figured you were okay. But seeing those guys chasing you didn't look friendly. What happened and where do you want to go?" he asked. "Take me to my place," I said. On the way, I told him everything. Hal was shocked and couldn't believe Stacy's betrayal, especially with the pilling plan. He shook his head in disbelief. "What do you want to do?" Hal asked as we pulled up to my place. "Park behind the building. Stacy will probably show up soon. If she's alone, I'll talk to her while I pack. Can I crash at your place for a few days?" "Of course. I only have a couch, but it's yours," Hal replied. "The couch is fine. If she brings any of those thugs, I'll slip out the back and head to your place." "Wait, I have an idea." I took the cash and hid it in an empty fast food bag, which we stashed under Hal's spare tire. "I might need backup. Got your weapon?" "Always," Hal said, showing me his pistol. He tucked it into his waistband and followed me inside. I was nearly done packing when we heard the front door unlock. Hal hid in the closet as Stacy rushed in. "Thank God you're here. I was so worried you'd be gone. We need to talk," she said, sounding remorseful. "Are you alone, or are the guys you hooked up with earlier nearby?" I asked. "It's just me," she winced. "I'm sorry for what happened tonight. I got caught up in everything. I was supposed to excite the guys and I went too far." I smiled sarcastically. "Why bother? They'd already paid. It's not like you'd get more out of them." Stacy tried to justify her actions, claiming she was playing both sides, hoping we'd get the money no matter what. She praised my win and said she was happy to be with me instead of someone else. "That's not how I remember it, Stacy. I heard you cheering for Goliath, telling him to finish me off so you could have him," I replied. She looked down but insisted she wanted to build a family with me. "This was just a one-time thing for the money." Goliath was sure I wouldn't remember anything. "But even if I forgot, you'd still be a cheater, Stacy. You were okay with having me pilled and held against my will. You betrayed me. That's unforgivable. We're done." She started sobbing. "No, you don't mean that. We belong together." Suddenly, there was a knock at the door. "Why don't you see who it is?" Stacy suggested sweetly. I don't care who it is, I said, suspecting it was the thugs. Stacy grabbed my phone and left the room. As soon as she opened the door, she let in Goliath and the 5 goons. I have his phone, so he's not recording anything, she said. Little did she know I had already activated the recording device. She continued, just hold him down, get the pills into him, and make it look like a mugging. What is this? Get out of my house, I shouted. I'm sorry, honey, but I can't let you remember tonight. It'll be easier if you just drink the stuff and go to sleep. If not, they'll force it down your throat and rough you up, she admitted. You didn't plan on this, I said, as I pulled out my Glock 17. Now sit down. I don't want to shoot anyone, but if I have to, I'll strike 3 of you before the rest decide what to do. They froze, clearly not expecting me to be armed. Goliath sneered. You wouldn't shoot. We'd still get you. Want to bet? I replied calmly. I'm a Marine, trained to shoot. If anyone makes a move, I'll put a bullet in 3 of you. Now sit down. One of the goons hesitated, but finally said, Why should we? We still have a chance. You have no chance, I replied. If you want to talk, sit. Otherwise, I'll call the police. It's your choice. They sat down as I instructed, sliding back on the sofa and chairs to make it harder for them to get up. I positioned myself against the opposite wall, sitting in a kitchen chair with my pistol resting on my thigh. My finger hovered just outside the trigger guard, ready to act. Look, sweetheart, Stacy said. Just give them the $20,000 and take the ketamine. Tomorrow, we'll wake up $20,000 richer, like nothing happened. I asked how she'd explain the money to me. Simple, she replied. You won $40,000 and gave me $20,000 to hold. Then you got mugged on the way home. They might have to rough you up a bit to make it look real, but you'd wake up as my loving husband, and we'd have a bright future. I started laughing, which made the men uneasy. Stacy looked puzzled and began to stand. Grab his weapon, Goliath urged. He won't hurt you. He loves you. He's half right, I said. I used to love you, but if you stand up, I'll shoot 3 of these guys. She sat back down, shocked. You're so stupid, Stacy. You fell for Goliath's lie that I'd wake up with no memory and believe whatever story you told me. But you were never going to see a dime of that money. They planned to pill me and have their way with you. They'd record everything and use it to blackmail you into doing whatever they wanted. This was never a one-time deal. Stacy tried to deny it, saying the guys were happy with what they got earlier, but I pointed out the video she made, which could easily spread and ruin her reputation. Now, whose idea was it to invite me tonight? I asked. Stacy admitted it was Goliath's idea. He wanted to humiliate me, not just by screwing her, but by making me watch. He wanted control, to keep me from interfering and calling the police. And once they had their blackmail material, they'd own her. You were never going to get that money, Stacy. They'd make sure of it, they'd use you whenever they wanted, and you'd be stuck. Stacy finally began to realize she'd been duped. She admitted to agreeing to sleep with Goliath, but not the others. I laughed at her naivety. You really think they'd go to all this trouble and not take turns? They'd get what they wanted, and you'd end up with nothing but a blackmail video. And even if you got the money, they'd make sure you paid for it. At the gym, they'd stage my injuries to look like an accident. But here at home, they'd make it look like a real mugging. They'd knock me senseless, maybe even break some bones. You wouldn't have the money to cover the medical bills because you were never going to get it. And if you did, Goliath would just use that as leverage to control you further. And let's be real, Stacy. You'd never go off birth control because you'd be too scared of getting pregnant with one of their kids, not mine. She sat there, finally understanding the mess she was in. I had figured it all out and made it clear I was done with her and her lies. Stacy stared at me in shock. Let me point out another flaw in your plan, I said. You wanted to say I got mugged after giving you $20,000, but there are 42 witnesses, including the referees, who saw me leave with all the cash. No mugger would have left any of it behind. Your story wouldn't hold up. They'd take every cent. How'd an uneducated jarhead outsmart us? Goliath grumbled. Stacy looked horrified, realizing how badly she'd been played. Just because I don't have a degree doesn't mean I'm stupid, I replied. In the Marines, I was trained to think through situations. Earlier tonight, I knew those 5 guys were over liquidation. You claiming to control them because they couldn't take you was ridiculous. You can't control what they do on their own. I bet you're all buddies, but this wasn't just about money. The split would be small, so why risk everything? No, the reward had to be worth it. I'm guessing you told your buddies about Stacy, and they helped you with this plan." Suddenly, Goliath grabbed Stacy and pulled her in front of him. "Drop the weapon or I'll snap her neck," he threatened. "I'm not going to shoot you, Goliath, but I will shoot 3 of these guys if you hurt her." "Eliminating her just gives me more reason to act," I said, raising my Glock. "Now, let her go." One of the goons spoke up. "Jerry, let her go. This guy isn't bluffing. He'll shoot us." Goliath hesitated, then released Stacy. The goon continued. "Look, you're not going to shoot anyone. You don't want prison, and you're not going to call the cops either." "Why wouldn't I?" I asked. He explained. "We've got 42 witnesses who saw your wife acting like a witch. They think you were in on it, pimping her out. You can deny it, but it'll look like you just got jealous. We might have threatened to rough you up, but liquidation? No way. That's how it'll play out. You can't prove otherwise." Goliath let go of Stacy, who looked at him with a mix of fear and anger. The goon continued. "We'd be caught with ketamine and a video camera, sure, but we're vets. We have a plausible reason for everything. Stacy won't report us because she's got no proof. Meanwhile, everyone saw her behavior tonight. She made that video, and you might not want that coming out in a small town." Goliath growled, "I need that money. I just bought a new truck." The smarter goon cut in. "Forget it. You lost the contest. Splitting the remaining money 5 ways isn't worth the risk. Stacy was the real prize, and we planned to keep her for ourselves. We weren't going to turn her into a promiscuous immediately. We had more events planned with her as the prize. Eventually, we might let her have a kid, but only after she was thoroughly ours. We'd even give her some money back to keep her happy. But now it's over. We're leaving." The man next to the leader spoke up. "We'll leave, and you two can sort things out. But honestly, I doubt counseling will help. You'll never truly forget or forgive. Still, I have a suggestion. I can give you some ketamine, a good dose that, with a few drinks, should erase your memory. We planned on giving you about 6 shots of booze. If you love Stacy, you could take it after we're gone. She won't be working at the gym anymore, so she's safe from us. Hopefully, she's learned her lesson about being gullible and the risks of cheating." I was amused by how quickly they were trying to salvage their plan. "You think I'd actually do that?" I asked. The man continued. "It'd be like giving her a second chance. She could explain the money truthfully. You won it in an arm wrestling contest. Most competitors don't live locally, so it's unlikely you'd ever run into one again. If you did, they might mention your hot wife, but probably not her behavior." I pretended to consider his point, but questioned how she'd explain my memory loss. "That's tricky," he admitted. "She'd have to make it look like you fell and strike your head after drinking. You might decide to get checked out at a hospital, so you'd need a solid story. But you'd still be married, and love can make you trust her explanation." The men chuckled at that, clearly trying to convince me. I suspected they were already thinking of ways to come back for the money. I let him continue. "You'd have to take the ketamine tonight, though, to ensure it erases enough memory. You might remember going to the gym, but not what happened there. That gives Stacy the chance to fill in the blanks." I then raised the real issue. What to do about Stacy? I could just divorce her and move on. "That seems like the smartest choice," I mused aloud. Stacy began begging, promising she'd never do anything like this again. "But you still cheated," I replied. "And taking ketamine after you guys leave raises another problem. What if you come back and blackmail Stacy for the money? You could create doubt and tear us apart." The men all shook their heads, including Stacy. I demanded each of them verbally promise they wouldn't bother us again, which they did, piling on assurances as if I was about to let them go. "The big problem is, Stacy would have to hurt me enough to cover the amnesia," I continued. "She'd need to make it look like a real fall. Could you do that, Stacy?" "Oh yes, I'd make it convincing," she said eagerly. "A few kicks to the head and ribs, maybe even stage a mugging. We could say we went out to celebrate and you got jumped. I could claim I ran for help and when I came back they were gone. I'd bring you home and kick you here to make it look real. I'd use your heavy boots and leave some bruises, maybe kick you in the balls a few times. Just enough to hurt, but not do serious damage." I couldn't believe how quickly she got on board with hurting me. The 6 men stared at her in disbelief. "And tomorrow I'd take care of you, bringing you ice packs for your head and balls," she added, almost gushing. "We'd save our marriage, have money for a baby, and I promise I won't cheat again. That includes making out or letting anyone feel me up." I noticed she only said that because I called it cheating. She still didn't fully agree. I asked her calmly, "You really wanted to have sex with Goliath, didn't you? You'd be thinking of that when you kicked me." "Okay, I won't lie," she admitted. "Yes, I was excited about screwing him. I felt his excitement and wanted it. It would have been wild. But now I'm mad at both of you. You for figuring it out and him for planning it. I'd like to kick you both in the nuts. Maybe that could be a condition for letting them go. I get to kick Goliath a couple of times too. Goliath bristled. Screw that. I'm being honest here. You won't remember this anyway, and you won't remember the other stuff either. Stacy's flushed face showed she'd remember everything and enjoy the memory, even if she missed out on actually being with Goliath. She seemed eager to hurt me, just as she had been ready to break my heart earlier, as long as I wouldn't remember any of it. Since we're being honest, I have a few more questions before deciding whether to let you go or let Stacy erase my memory, I said. Both Stacy and Goliath nodded eagerly. You both claimed you never actually slept together and were candid because you thought you'd erase my memory. Stacy even asked that I get a chance to win the prize, though she didn't think I'd succeed. But tell me, did you plan to make me watch before pilling me? You've hinted at it both ways. I already suspected the truth and confirmed it when they responded. Yeah, we thought it'd be thrilling to make you watch, Goliath admitted. Stacy liked the idea of having that kind of power over you. The word power stood out, especially considering how much Stacy seemed to relish the thought of hurting me after I passed out, or maybe even while I was still conscious, just to hear me scream. It wasn't just me, Stacy protested, still not realizing what she was saying. Goliath said it'd be hot if you cried while watching him be a better man. I then asked who suggested it first. Goliath quickly replied, I did, but Stacy added ideas to make it wilder. I followed up with another question. You said she gave you all heads this afternoon as payment for your help. Is that true? One of the men confirmed it. Yeah, she agreed to it to show she was on board and to pay us since we couldn't compete for her. I nodded, hiding my emotions. By then, I just wanted answers. All 5 men admitted she'd done it, each providing details. Stacy then said, Let's let them go and take care of your memory. We can reset our marriage, and I promise I won't be tempted again. I barely kept a straight face. Yeah, after you enjoy stomping my nuts, I said sarcastically. Oh no, I won't enjoy it. I'll just do enough to make it look real, she contradicted herself. I asked the men if they planned to double back for the money, and Stacy after I was out, and they all denied it, trying to convince me. I pulled out a second cell phone, raising my Glock to remind them I was serious. These guys aren't going anywhere far. They'll give us just enough time for me to take the ketamine and maybe stage the mugging. Then they'd come back for the money and you, Stacy. Stacy looked shocked. You'd be dumb enough to tell them I'd taken the pill and they'd return to finish the job, I said. She asked what their plan was. They already have enough blackmail material on you. Do you really think they didn't record everything? They'd come back, take the money, and force you into their plan again? I could have pretended to take the ketamine, waited for them to return, and caught them red-handed. But that would have been risky. Goliath ranted about how a dumb Marine outsmarted them. I asked where the video was, and the veterinarian admitted it was in his case by the door. Stacy retrieved the camera and tossed me the SD card, but I confirmed the footage was also saved on the camera's hard drive. I told them I didn't care about the video and let Stacy decide what to do with it. If you let them blackmail you, that's on you, I said. I had bigger concerns, like the recording I had been making since the beginning. Just then, the emergency operator's voice came through. What is the nature of your emergency? I gave my name and address to the emergency operator and reported, I have 6 men my wife invited to our home to attack and rob me. I'm holding them at under pressure and need officers dispatched. No ambulance is needed yet, but it might be if one of them tries anything. All 6 men glared at me. What the hell? We were ready to leave. You even talked about fixing things with your wife. We gave you the camera. You could have deleted all the evidence. We'd have no blackmail material left, the veterinarian protested. Stacy looked shocked. Well, my marriage is ruined because of you guys, so I'm returning the favor. Now you can explain to your wives why you got arrested and see if they believe you. I doubt they're as gullible as mine. 3 of the men shifted in their seats. I raised the Glock, making sure they saw my finger on the trigger. I wouldn't try it. This trigger is sensitive and takes less than 2 pounds of pressure to fire. And Stacy, I told you I'd never trust you again. You seemed too eager to fake a mugging by stomping my nuts. I called out for Hal, who stepped out from around the corner. This is his phone, I said, holding up the phone I used to keep the emergency call active. Everything's been recorded and the pin recorder is back up. One of the men yelled, That's hearsay. I shrugged. It'll still be part of the statement, and whether it's allowed in court or not, your wives might not like what they hear. I kept the weapon moving between them, knowing they were close to making a move. Hal, go outside and inform the police. I'll put the weapon down when they enter. When the officers arrive, they'll take us all in. You weren't involved, so secure everything for me, okay? I said, handing him the SD card from the camera. Got it, Hal replied. I'll come down to the station after locking up. We heard sirens as police cars approached. The emergency operator confirmed. Officers are on location. I instructed, my friend is at the door, and it's unlocked. I'm sitting in the room with the pistol held by the barrel. The first officer through the door was Hal's older brother, Bob, a police lieutenant. What's going on here? Army, put the weapon down and step away. I complied, noting his body cam was running. Well, it seems my wife cheated on me, gave these guys heads earlier, and planned to sleep with this one, I said, pointing at Goliath. They threatened to pill me with ketamine and booze. When that plan failed, they came here for a second chance. My wife let them in and gave them my phone so I couldn't record anything. It's in his shirt pocket, I added, nodding at Goliath. That phone should show their intentions. Goliath quickly countered. Ridiculous. We drove Stacy here after her husband left her in Kensington following his arm wrestling win. She invited us to celebrate. He's delusional. He told contestants he feared for his life. I suggested taking us all to the station to give statements and make a public record. Bob cut me off, saying he knew what to do. Soon, everyone but Hal was in handcuffs and loaded into police cars. Hal told Bob he'd secure the house and then come to the station. I knew he'd upload copies of the recordings as planned. At the station, I explained what happened and what I suspected their plan was. I advised Bob to check the case left at my house for ketamine and the camera with the video of Stacy. Bob offered me coffee and then began taking the other statements. Later, Bob returned. Army, these guys are all telling the same story, that you're crazy. They claim you won the arm wrestling competition and then held them under pressure after Stacy invited them over. One of them is a lawyer and wants to represent the others, but since he's also a suspect, he can't. They're all writing statements. Do you have any proof? I can't open the files on that camera without a warrant, but I did impound it. I told Bob that Hal had an audio recording of their confessions and was making copies. This changed everything immediately. As soon as Stacy heard about the recording, she broke down and changed her story, claiming she was seduced and blackmailed into cheating by the guys. An officer accompanied Hal and me back to my house with my permission, so no warrant was needed. They secured a small case one of the men had left at the door. Inside, along with the camera Stacy had removed earlier, were 2 bottles of liquor, ketamine, large tubes of lubricant, and some flexible hoses. The video downloaded from the camera clearly showed my soon-to-be ex-wife happily engaging with all 5 men in Goliath, talking about how much she loved the thrill and how she couldn't wait to be with Goliath after he won the contest. Bob might have pushed the limits, but he let me watch the video at the station. By then, I had my own copy to watch later. With enough evidence, Stacy, Goliath, and the 5 men were kept in jail until their arraignment on Monday. I kept the SD card hidden. Bob told Hal and me to stick around, but I decided to leave town. Early Sunday morning, I bought 2 cheap round-trip tickets to Las Vegas for Hal and me. We spent the day collecting discarded sports betting slips, amassing nearly $40,000 worth, planning to claim I'd lost most of the money. Hal and I had a wild time in Vegas, taking photos at strip clubs and posing with liquor bottles to create a story about spending our winnings on a good time. We even made donations to a children's cancer hospital, wearing the sweatshirts they gave us for our contributions. On Monday, I ignored a barrage of calls, suspecting some were from Stacy's parents. Bob eventually texted, demanding I call him back. When I did, he wasn't pleased, but told us to get back home. When we returned, Bob gave us an official reprimand as he took us to the district attorney's office. We claimed we didn't realize we had to stay in town and thought close meant anywhere in the continental U.S. Bob and the DA weren't happy with our explanation. The DA asked me to go over the events again. My story matched the audio recording perfectly, and I was more determined than ever to divorce Stacy. I visited a lawyer, Mr. Price, who advised me that the divorce would cost around $2,000, but was the least of my worries. He told me not to stress about hiding the money since I didn't have much left, and that the criminal charges against Stacy and the men were more important. On Tuesday, I found a new apartment close to work. Though my parents would have taken me in, I preferred to stay independent and away from Stacy. By then, rumors had spread in our small town. The story was that Stacy had an affair with her boss, who came to my house to confront me, and I held him at under pressure until the police arrived. After Stacy refused to move back in with her parents, I moved out. Following my lawyer's advice, I kept the true story quiet, holding onto the audio recordings as leverage. On Wednesday, I started receiving more calls from unknown numbers. The fourth was from Gloria Jenkins, Goliath's wife, who texted, asking me to call her. Curious, I did. She picked up immediately and told me her husband claimed everything was a misunderstanding. She wanted to meet in person, so I drove to Kensington, bringing Hal's recording pin just in case. At the cafe, Gloria introduced herself. She was a stunning woman, blonde and in her late 20s. Despite her calm exterior, I could sense her anxiety. I wasn't sure if she was a sufferer or in on the scheme with her husband, so I stayed cautious. She explained that all she knew was her husband and his friends had been arrested after an incident at my home, and she suspected she wasn't getting the full story. She asked me to explain what had happened. Realizing she and the other wives deserved to know the truth, I suggested inviting them over. I pointed out the three women sitting across the cafe who had been watching us since I arrived. Gloria seemed impressed by my observation and invited the women over. After introductions, one of them nervously asked, "Is it as bad as we imagined?" I replied, "Maybe not for you, but for me. It's the end of my marriage." Goliath had been trying to seduce my wife for a while. He succeeded in everything but actual sex, and he and his friends planned to blackmail her into being available to them in the future. I watched their expression shift from disbelief to anger and back to shock, with muttered curses all around. "No wonder the cops held them so long," Gloria said. "They got out this morning and have been with their lawyer since. I assume you have proof, even though the guys claim you don't." I pulled out a flash drive. "I have hours of audio recordings, pretty damning stuff. There's some irrelevant chatter in the middle, but I can summarize it and then you can listen." One of the women shook her head in disbelief. "I can't believe how dumb your wife is. A head isn't cheating? Seriously? And to make a video of herself knowing it would be sent to strangers?" Another added. "She thought it was okay to cheat as long as you didn't remember because of the pills?" Someone muttered. I nodded, noticing how the women weren't shocked by their husband's behavior. "Why would I be?" one woman said. "My husband's an egotistical idiot. My mom warned me he'd cheat eventually. When we heard about an angry husband with a weapon, we figured it was something like this. But this is worse than we imagined." Gloria suggested, "Let's go to my office. We can listen to the recording there." She explained she worked in investments and had a nearby office. They listened to the recording, fast-forwarding through the arm wrestling competition. By the end, they were almost as angry as I was. One woman joked, "Teach me how to bite it off if he tries that crap again." The others laughed, and they all made quick phone calls, none lasting more than a minute. Gloria explained that the 6 men had been tight-knit friends since high school, bonding over bodybuilding. They chased girls but were disciplined, charming, and stuck together more than with their wives. "We girls get along because of them, but our marriages aren't great. We're like satellites around their bromance." Later, when the others had left, Gloria asked me, "Army, you're clearly smart. Why are you working such a low-income job?" I shrugged and explained, "After I left the military, I wanted to stay close to my parents." "Do they need constant help?" she asked. I shook my head. "No, they actually told me I didn't need to stay so close, but I got complacent. It was home. Hal's in a similar situation. His brother's a senior police officer, but he works a low-stress job too." I continued. "While overseas, I read a lot, mystery stories mostly. It kept my mind sharp." Gloria laughed, and I found myself liking her laugh more than I should have. I quickly excused myself, feeling guilty. "You can call me anytime," I told her, though I wasn't sure I should admit how much I looked forward to it. After several calls, texts, and voicemails, Stacy finally tracked me down, pleading to talk. "All right, Stacy, what makes you think there's a misunderstanding? And why do you think there's any chance of saving our marriage?" She looked startled. "You made it clear on Saturday night. You didn't think what you did was wrong. Flirting, making out, letting another man touch you wasn't cheating? Even what you did with those men wasn't cheating as long as I didn't know?" Stacy babbled. "I didn't mean to hurt you. I just got caught up in the excitement with Goliath." "So the next time a hot guy comes along, you might get caught up again?" I asked sarcastically. "And you thought it was okay to humiliate me, wipe my memory, and then everything would be fine?" I surprised myself by staying calm. I wasn't angry, just indignant. Stacy ran through her excuses and finally admitted, "I was wrong, but I want you, Army. I want to have your babies. It was just fun, and I didn't think you'd ever know." But you would know, I pointed out. You'd remember and think you got away with it. She suggested counseling, but I wasn't convinced. Do you want to listen to a recording of what you said Saturday night? If you still think it was acceptable, then we can talk. I had no intention of fixing our marriage, but I wanted her to confront the reality of her actions. The following Saturday, Gloria invited me to a dinner party with the other wives and girlfriends. I wanted to see Gloria, but wasn't entirely trusting, so I carried a small pistol. I'm glad you came, Army, Gloria said warmly. I was hoping you'd trust me, but I understand being cautious. You're smart to be prepared. The women discussed their husbands' weak excuses. None of them seemed that upset about the divorces, one said. They're more worried about money. We're going after half of everything and won't pay a cent for their legal defense. My husband downplayed the charges, another added. But when I quoted the recordings, he panicked. He didn't realize you recorded the whole night. I nodded. Exposing them was my main goal. Gloria giggled. Jerry's reaction was priceless. How did a jarhead think to record everything? One woman added, It saved me from marrying Andy. I need to look beyond the surface next time. They raised their glasses, cheering in agreement. Gloria seemed to be studying me closely. One of the women asked if I'd talked to Stacy. I admitted I had, curious about her excuses. They guessed I'd recorded it and laughed, saying they'd done the same with their husbands. Damn, your wife is delusional, one commented after hearing the recording. She doesn't think what she did was that wrong. She's just mad you found out. Gloria added thoughtfully. She admits her faults, but still wants a future with you. If that's love, I'd hate to see her version of hate, another woman quipped. Gloria replied, She loves him, but doesn't understand that love alone can't fix a marriage. There's so much more needed. She looked at me intently, leaving her statement hanging in the air. I waited until midweek to call Gloria, curious to see how she was doing. I was surprised when she seemed genuinely happy to hear from me, and we decided to meet up that weekend. I'm really glad you called, Army, she said when we met. I wanted to call you, but hesitated. That surprised me. I hope you trust me this time, Gloria added with a grin, then joked. Maybe I should frisk you, and not just your waistband. I stared at her, caught off guard. We're not kids, she continued. I think we both feel a connection. Of course, we met under the worst circumstances. You're probably wondering what kind of shallow person I am to have fallen for a guy like Jerry. I started to protest, but she kept going. I was in love with the idea of love. Jerry was smart, good-looking, and had the kind of physique that made people admire him. It fed my ego to be the one who won him. My mom warned me he'd break my heart, but I didn't listen. By the time I realized she was right, I was already married. But I'm not a quitter, she added sheepishly. Though this is one time I should have quit. I can see why your wife fell for his charm. He could sell anything. He was great at coaching, always encouraging people. I'd never seen him try to seduce another woman, and I'm not sure he ever cheated on me, though he denies it. My mom wasn't surprised by what happened. She said it was just a matter of time before Jerry stepped out on me. At least we didn't have kids. I'm not sure what Jerry saw in me either, Gloria admitted, blushing. To me, it was obvious. She was smart, compassionate, and incredibly attractive. I'm pushy, maybe too driven. I was raised to always do my best and expect the same from others. My parents didn't have high incomes, but they loved their jobs and raised two well-rounded daughters. They encouraged us to try everything, dance, sports, music, so we could find what we liked. Dad didn't say much when I told him about Jerry. Mom spoke for both of them when we discussed it. She even had a few things to say about you. Me? I was surprised. I've never met her. True, but you're part of the story, Gloria said. Curious, I asked, what did she say? Most of it's between us, but she analyzed you and your wife like I did. And? I prompted. She agrees with me. Stacy loves you, but doesn't respect you. I nodded. Yeah, I've wondered if she even loved me at all. Oh, she loves you. She wants your kids. If she just wanted to cheat, she wouldn't have cared if you found out. She went to great lengths to keep your marriage intact. But part of her thinks you're not good enough for her. She wants the upper hand. That's why she talked about humiliating you after sleeping with Jerry. That's a whole new level of disrespect, and it pisses me off. I laughed. It didn't exactly make me happy either. Gloria's eyes filled with tears. You don't get it. It infuriates me. I want to rip her hair out for what she planned to do to you. She might not respect you, but I do." Taking a deep breath, she continued. "From the first moment we met, I respected you. You had the guts to meet Jerry's wife, and you treated me with kindness and respect. I liked that. I liked you." "Let me finish," Gloria said, holding up her hand. "You remind me of my dad. They say girls marry men like their fathers. I didn't with Jerry, but I see some of Dad in you. Mom even warned me not to fall for you too quickly, but I'm struggling here. I have to know. Do you like me?" I admitted. I felt guilty about my feelings for you. Part of me wanted to be with you just to get back at Jerry, but I realized I don't care about him. I care about you. And that scared me. I'm married, even if it's to someone who doesn't deserve me. But yes, I like you, Gloria, she smiled. Good. Then we can take our time and see how we fit together. We both laughed, and then she asked, "Can we at least kiss?" I nodded, and she quickly sat in my lap, kissing me deeply. When we pulled apart, she grinned. "I'm staking my claim on you." "And when the gold runs out, you'll move on?" I teased. She giggled. "No, I'll reinvest everything I find. I want a relationship built on love, not just lust. Respect is key. We'll find common ground because I'm a pushy woman who knows what she wants, just like my mom." Over the next few days, I couldn't stop thinking about what Gloria had said. I knew I was rebounding from Stacy, but this felt different. Gloria was right. Stacy might have loved me, but she didn't respect me. That stung. Gloria, on the other hand, openly respected me, even comparing me to her father, whom I hadn't met yet. She was clear about her growing feelings, and while I was deeply attracted to her, it scared me and made me feel guilty. Meanwhile, Mr. Price filed my divorce papers, separating my finances from Stacy's. Without a job, she relied on our meager savings and eventually had to call her parents for help. This meant confessing our separation and its cause, though she conveniently left out the worst parts. Her father called, upset, urging me to consider counseling since, in his version of events, Stacy had merely flirted and gone too far with her boss. I sent him a flash drive with the audio recording of that night. 3 days later, he apologized, admitting he understood but still needed to help his daughter stay out of jail. By the end of the second week, everyone involved knew I had the full audio recordings. The 2 veterinarians were sanctioned, unable to handle anesthetics, which made their work nearly impossible. At the gym, every female member was informed about Jerry's actions, and Stokes Fitness fired him to avoid a mass walkout. I couldn't sue the company, but my attorney had considered it. The criminal trial took 6 months, which I learned was relatively quick. The local media followed the case closely, given the prominence of the men involved. Lawyers tried to suppress the audio recordings, the prosecution's key evidence, and the men even tried to press charges against me for holding them under pressure. That was quickly dismissed. Stacy, feeling betrayed, turned on them and testified for the prosecution, revealing how they planned their attack on me. Her confession of agreeing to pill me earned her a 2-year sentence, with 18 months suspended. While I initially would have been satisfied just to ruin their relationships, I couldn't deny a sense of justice being served. During this time, I grew closer to Gloria. She was a tough taskmaster, pushing me to enroll in college. Hal joined me, and we both did well. By the time the trial came, we had completed a semester with good grades. Gloria also set Hal up with Marie, one of the exes of the goons. Both women were remarkable, and Hal joked about their shared fates. Gloria and I waited until our divorces were final before taking our relationship further, and it was worth the wait. On our honeymoon, Gloria revealed she had stopped her birth control months earlier, wanting to start a family with me. She also had a temporary tattoo on her back that read, "Exclusive property of Calvin Bostic," which made me laugh. We both felt lucky to have found each other. One day, while out for a snack, we ran into Stacy, who was back at her old job after serving her time. She tried to make small talk, but I informed her that Gloria was now my wife and that we were expecting a child. Another server took over for Stacy, who seemed upset. Over the next few months, Gloria and I settled into a new rhythm. My divorce from Stacy, though difficult, felt necessary for my happiness. Gloria and I focused on our future together, excited about the arrival of our baby. The criminal trial concluded and justice was served, giving me closure. When our son was born, our lives were filled with joy. Gloria and I continued to grow closer, grateful for the second chance at happiness. Looking back, I realized that the difficult journey had led me to where I was meant to be, by Gloria's side, with our son in my arms, finally feeling at home.
Ex-wife cheated, got an STD, and now she's desperate for help after I became rich and successful. You've emerged victorious while I've suffered defeat. You walk away with property, money, and an upgraded partner. The hotel room is yours tonight, along with the arrangements I've made. Please don't return the gift. It would only remind you of your deceit. I'm driving home and have no desire to see you, him, or your associates again. Let me know when your team will collect your belongings. Anything unnecessary will be packed away, symbolizing the mess of our marriage. To quote my father in the Air Force, yay for me and screw you. I'm done serving you. Enjoy your journey. Your acting skills have earned it. 10 years later on a Wednesday morning, I awoke to banging. Rubbing sleep from my eyes, I checked the clock. 8:15 a.m. The noise persisted now at my front door. Who would knock at this hour? I slipped into my robe and slippers, heading downstairs where the knocking grew louder. Peering through the peephole, I saw a disheveled woman. Opening the door, prepared to scold her, I recognized her, older, thinner, her once vibrant hair now tinged with gray. She smelled, her dress worn. She resembled homeless Daisy, who often lurked in the streets or underpasses. In disbelief, I questioned the woman who had once been my wife. "Yes, Mike, it's me. Can I come inside?" she pleaded desperately. "By the way, that's me, Mike Carpenter." "No," I replied, slamming the door in her face. Just then, another knock echoed, accompanied by her sobs. "Please, Mike, I'm begging you, open the door." I flung the door open to prevent further pounding, but remained in the doorway to block her entry. The neighbors already viewed me as peculiar. I didn't want to attract more attention by making a scene on the doorstep. "What do you want?" "I made it clear 10 years ago that I never want to see you again." "Never? What part of that didn't you understand?" "And why are you here?" "I thought you and Dr. Wonderful were living in Milwaukee." Regaining composure, Daisy wiped her tears and cast me the most longing glance I'd ever witnessed. "Can I come in? I'm hungry, tired, and need to use the restroom." "Please, I'll explain later," she implored, her feet shifting uneasily. With my experience as a teacher, I recognized the telltale signs of imminent urgency. I didn't want her relieving herself on my porch, so I reluctantly swung the door open, gesturing her inside with a silent invitation. "You remember where the bathroom is?" I scolded, a reminder that we once shared this home. "Hurry up." "Thanks," Daisy said, entering. She dropped her suitcase and dashed to the downstairs bathroom. I closed the door, went upstairs for a quick bathroom break, and returned downstairs, finding her still in the bathroom. I went to the kitchen, fired up my Keurig, and brewed coffee. By then, Daisy had returned. "Can I have a cup?" she pleaded. I paused. Torn between anger and restraint. I couldn't slap a woman, and I didn't want trouble. "Yeah, I'm not heartless," I replied, "but I'm not your servant either." So I relented, partly out of curiosity. "I don't have fancy stuff," I said, offering milk and sugar. "Black's fine," Daisy said gratefully. I handed her the cup, watching her trembling hands. "Why are you here?" I asked. "I've got nowhere else to go," she finally admitted. "I used up my last dime on cab fare." "What happened to your beloved Dr. Bruce?" I quipped sarcastically. "Dr. Bruce?" "It fell apart," she stuttered, avoiding my gaze. If my sarcasm had been any sharper, you could have sliced tile with it. I noticed her flinch. After the divorce, we tied the knot, but things soured when Bruce faced a massive medical malpractice lawsuit. Both of us lost our jobs and medical licenses, and we ended up losing everything. Bruce became abusive, blaming me for our situation. "One day I caught him cheating," Daisy tearfully recounted. "So he got a taste of his own medicine," I remarked wryly, remembering our own past drama. "But karma's a kicker, not fun." Daisy whimpered. "Just like it wasn't funny when you publicly tore me apart on our anniversary." I reminded her. "Do you realize it's the 10th anniversary of that night?" "No, I didn't know," Daisy murmured. "Did you report him to the cops?" I asked, showing some compassion. "No, too scared. But I did divorce him. Unfortunately, I was left with next to nothing after the split," Daisy explained. "I haven't eaten in 2 days." "What's your play here?" I questioned. "Sympathy? You might find it in the dictionary between crap and chiropractor." "I despise you. I loathe you as intensely as I once adored you," I snarled. "Now that your world's crumbling, you come crawling back to me. Where are your parents and friends now?" "They've all abandoned me," Daisy sobbed. "No surprises there," I scoffed bitterly. "Did you and the idiot have kids?" "No, never did. Turns out Bruce is infertile. For some reason he blames me for that too," she spat bitterly. "At least the gene pool's safe from you two," I remarked wryly. "Guess something good came from that mess." She wrinkled her nose at me. "What happened to you, Mike? You used to be so caring, so kind." Anger morphed into fury and I squeezed my eyes shut. "You want to know what happened? Look in the mirror. You happened. Thanks to you, I'm incapable of love and trust." "The nice guy finished last," I growled. But I thought you'd move on, find someone else, Daisy wheezed wide-eyed. Get real. After what you did, you never once hinted I was just a fallback for you. I thought we had something solid, but you lied. 13 damn years, 10 as husband and wife. Do you think I can trust anyone after that? I took a deep breath. And how many women do you think would want damaged goods? Not that there was a line, I muttered to myself. Still, not a single one came along. So, are you surprised I've turned into a recluse after a decade of licking my wounds? I suppose not, Daisy admitted sheepishly, lowering her gaze. And here you are. What do you want from me, shelter? Care while you wait for Prince Charming to stroll back in? I hoped you'd let me stay just until I get back on my feet, she pleaded. There's a shelter downtown, I pointed out. That's what they're for. That's where my taxes go, to keep people like you off the streets. I tried, but they were full, Daisy confessed. Even the YWCA and the big church downtown had no room. Please, Mike, I'm begging you. I'll do anything, cook, clean, whatever you need. I wanted to lash out, but I held back, glaring at her. She visibly recoiled. What makes you think I'd want you near me? To me, you're contaminated, a walking hazard, I hissed. And then it dawned on me. You've been attempting to sell yourself, I remarked. She lowered her head shyly, tears dripping onto the table as she nodded. How do I appear? No takers, she questioned. I studied her closely before replying. Oh, how the mighty have fallen. Perhaps I should depart. Perhaps I should simply fade away and perish in some, Daisy cried. No one desires me anyhow. I watched her sobbing at the kitchen table, feeling a mix of anger and pity. Despite my strong hatred for her, seeing her like this after all these years was jarring. And then there was Bruce, the dirtbag who had taken her from me to mistreat her. My contempt for him was growing. Raised never to use violence against women, I struggled with conflicting emotions. Taking a reluctant breath, I suggested we eat first. Daisy agreed, expressing her hunger. I prepared scrambled eggs and bacon, recalling how Daisy used to make them. Her eyes lit up when I served her, grateful for the cheese on the eggs. As she ate voraciously, I couldn't help but feel a pang of sympathy. When she finished, she thanked me for the meal and praised my cooking. She declined more food but asked for another cup of coffee. Sure, I replied, taking her cup. When I returned, she sipped her coffee and seemed to feel better, a little. The food helped, she admitted. Good. The shower might help more, I suggested bluntly. No offense, but you stink. Daisy's face fell. I'm sorry, can I use your shower, please? You know where it is, I said. Towels are where they always are. My robe will be on the door. Don't put it back on after your shower. You can use the washer and dryer for your clothes. As she disappeared into the bathroom, I grumbled about cleaning, then washed dishes, went upstairs to get ready, and reflected on Daisy's departure with Bruce, the betrayal that devastated me. Counseling helped, and I poured my feelings into writing, eventually publishing a book about my experience, bringing some closure. Another factor in maintaining my sanity was my involvement in martial arts. Initially, two senseis urged me to quit due to my intensity during sparring. However, I found guidance from a retired Marine at the community center. Unlike others, he remained composed during our sessions, teaching me to channel my emotions into controlled strikes rather than letting them dictate my actions. It was a challenging skill to master, as evidenced by the bruises I accumulated. Meeting Daisy again took me by surprise, especially seeing her health decline. I wondered if she was sick. Oddly, my anger shifted toward Bruce. Even though I initially wanted to push Daisy away, I hesitated. What if something happened to her? Could I handle the aftermath? The idea of worsening my emotional state and facing potential legal issues wasn't appealing. I decided to get another perspective and called my mom. Morning, Mike, she greeted cheerfully. What's on your mind? Skipping the usual chit-chat, I blurted out, guess who showed up this morning? Now you got me curious. Who? She asked. Daisy, I confessed. I heard her sigh. What's the deal? What does she want? She probed. I recounted Daisy's situation and what she told me. Mom, she looks awful. My gut says I should kick her out, but... You'd regret it if something happened to her, Mom predicted, echoing my worry. Yeah, you're probably right. Plus, she treated Bruce terribly, I added. I know she hurt you deeply, Mom acknowledged, but maybe hearing her out is the wise move. How about I come over later? Knowing Mom's talent for unraveling things, I agreed. Sounds good, Mom. Your input would be invaluable. Let me handle it for now, and I'll see you soon. Thanks, Mom. I really appreciate it, I expressed gratefully. We wrapped up our chat, and I tended to my chores. Slipping into my usual summer gear of a tee and jeans, I went downstairs. Daisy had already started laundry, wearing my old robe and slippers as she waited for me in the living room. I didn't bother to check if she had anything on underneath. The robe was tightly tied, showing dark stains on her legs. Though she smelled better, she didn't look any better. Want a coffee refill? I offered. Yes, please, she accepted. Pouring another cup, I joined her as she sipped. Her shaky hands caught my eye. Thanks, she mumbled. I'll leave once my clothes are done, she added. No hurry, I assured her. I do have some questions if you don't mind, I continued. Sure, Daisy agreed. Bruce faced malpractice claims. Weren't doctors like him insured? I asked. They were, but it turned into a class action. Even though most claims were baseless, the insurance refused coverage due to many judgments against him, Daisy clarified. Some claims were proven true? I probed. The unproven ones were dismissed due to lack of evidence, she explained. But the damage was done. We lost our jobs and licenses. Didn't you have 401 Ks? I questioned. Surprised. Yes, we did. We lived off them for a year, paying hefty penalties, but we lost everything, Daisy lamented. What's Bruce doing now? I chuckled, recalling his earlier dreams. He works as a parking attendant, making about $16 an hour, she revealed. And your plans? I redirected. I thought about office work in the medical field. Despite losing my nursing license, I'm hopeful, Daisy replied quietly. Best of luck, I offered. Transportation and housing, I pressed. I can take the bus or walk, she sighed. I'll figure something out, but it takes money, she acknowledged. And you don't have any, I noted. Expected me to support you until you bounce back, huh? I took a gamble with the question. Yes, Daisy admitted. I get I'm not owed anything, but I hoped, given what I sacrificed in the divorce, you might show some kindness. My infatuation blinded me to your struggles. Now I see assuming was a mistake. You're right, I don't owe you, I affirmed. She seemed defeated, but I sighed and added, but I'm not heartless. You clearly need help. My mom's on her way. She wants to talk before I decide. Of course, Daisy replied, visibly relieved. Your mom's always meant a lot to me and she adored you, I noted. Then, unexpectedly, she said, despite it all, Mom still cared for you. Cared? Daisy asked, surprised. Yes. So you need to be brutally honest with her, understand? I do, I promise, honesty, Daisy assured. And Mike? What? I asked. Thank you, genuinely, for everything, Daisy expressed. Hold off on the thanks, I cautioned. Just then, the doorbell rang. I peeked through the peephole, seeing my mom, so I greeted her with a hug as I let her in. Daisy, goodness, has it really been 10 years? My mom exclaimed, spotting Daisy in my old robe. Both women hugged and exchanged kisses. It's nice to see you again, Lorraine, Daisy replied. Mike, dear, why don't you give us some girl time? My mom suggested. Knowing she wanted privacy, I headed to my home office, closing the door. I surfed the web, looking into the malpractice lawsuit against Dr. Bruce Williams. After some searching, I stumbled upon troubling information. Bruce had reportedly diagnosed around 97% of his 2,000 patients with epilepsy over 4 years. However, many children were misdiagnosed or over-medicated, leading to unnecessary treatments and procedures. Daisy was often implicated as an accomplice. The hospital had to refund $300,000 for improper billing, prompting their termination and license revocation. Reading this, I was appalled. Bruce seemed to be the ringleader, with Daisy following his lead. My mother interrupted, expressing concern about Daisy's health and suggesting a visit to Dr. McGregor. Her grave tone weighed heavily on me. Terry McGregor had been our family doctor for years, and Mom had worked for him until retiring recently. Why, Mom? I pondered. I can't diagnose, but I've seen many cancer cases in women. I bet she needs urgent medical attention, but she didn't stop there. I know Daisy has strained your bond, and I understand, Mom admitted. But if she's dealing with health issues, we should help. It's the right thing. She gave me a small, lopsided smile. I never said being a Christian was easy, did I? Plus, Michael James Carpenter, your father and I didn't raise you to be cold-hearted, did we? I wrinkled my nose, returning her smile, and shook my head. So, she went on, I called Dr. McGregor. He'll see her today and run tests. If they find anything, they'll refer her to a specialist and assist with Medicaid. She'll change, and I'll drive her, Mom decided. You can't afford that, I objected. Here, take this. I handed her 2 $100 bills. Thanks, Mike. You're a good son, she acknowledged. Just so we're clear, I'm not doing this for her. I'm doing it because of the values you taught me. That doesn't mean I forgive her or take her back, I asserted firmly. Got it, Mom replied quietly. An awkward silence hung in the air. Did she mention that idiot Bruce assaulted her? I finally asked. Yes, she did, Mom confirmed, her face neutral, her voice steady. I nodded briskly. That scoundrel needs consequences, I thought. Another tense silence followed. "Keep me updated," I instructed. "I will," Mom assured, kissing my forehead before leaving. Exiting my office, I saw Daisy in a different outfit, still worn but clean. "Thanks for breakfast," she murmured timidly. "You're welcome," I replied stiffly. After they left, I locked up and grabbed more coffee, researching Wisconsin's laws on spousal abuse. Sadly, I found the time limit for prosecution was discouraging. Unsure of when Bruce attacked Daisy, I doubted the authorities could act. Feeling frustrated, I briefly considered taking matters into my own hands. To clear my head, I changed and rode my stationary bike, pushing myself through a tough workout. Over the years, I had gone from unfit to fit, sticking to a regular exercise routine. Afterward, feeling refreshed, I showered, dressed, and had a light lunch while catching up on the news. By the time I listened to Mom's message, it was mid-afternoon. "Was wondering where you guys were," I said as I answered the phone. "Just finished with Dr. McGregor," Mom replied wearily. Judging by her tone, Daisy wasn't nearby. "Any updates?" I asked. "McGregor's concerned about Daisy. Test results suggest cervical cancer. He's arranged an appointment with an oncologist for Friday. She's applied for Medicaid and emergency aid. McGregor also suspects physical abuse," Mom disclosed. "We're aware," I acknowledged. She mentioned not eating. Mom continued, her concern evident. "But McGregor thinks it's more severe, lacking essential nutrients." Seeing her worry, I nodded. "It's late. I'll take her for a meal. Grab essentials in her suitcase. She should stay with me. We need to talk," Mom suggested. "Sounds like a plan," I agreed. "Keep me posted." "Love you," Mom said. "Love you too," I replied. About 3 hours later, they were on their way. We settled in the study while Daisy packed. "Sorry for the delay," Mom began. "No worries," I said. "What's the plan?" "Caring for Daisy till her appointment. She still cares for you. Wanted you to know," Mom explained. "No reconciliation, not after her lies and infidelity," I said firmly. "Understood," Mom replied. "She thinks she can win you back," Mom revealed. "Out of the question," I asserted. "Besides, I've changed." "I miss the old you," Mom admitted. "Can you join us for dinner on Friday?" she asked. "I'll make lasagna." "Absolutely," I agreed. "Your lasagna always brings a smile." We hugged and returned to the front room where Daisy was waiting with her suitcase. "I'll stay with your mom, if that's okay," she said weakly. "That's up to her," I replied, noticing my mom's expression. "Thanks for breakfast and for listening," Daisy said tearfully. "You're welcome," I nodded. "Don't forget about dinner on Friday," my mom reminded unnecessarily. "I'll be there, I promise," I assured her. Over the next 2 days, I kept busy with work and household chores. With school out for summer, I had to tackle curriculum planning and home maintenance. I trusted my mom to take care of Daisy, knowing her resourcefulness in navigating challenges. Finally, Friday arrived. After a shower, I picked up wine and headed to my mom's for lasagna. Arriving at 6:15, Daisy greeted me and led me inside. Mom was busy in the kitchen, and Daisy appeared on the verge of tears. I thanked Daisy as I entered the kitchen, and Mom's face lit up at the sight of the wine. We sat down to enjoy the meal, though Daisy seemed visibly distressed. "How did things go today?" I finally inquired. "We managed to get Daisy's application approved," Mom reported. "Thank goodness for this newfangled internet system. I wish they'd had it when I retired." Observing her forced optimism, I sought reassurance. "So Daisy's medical costs will be covered?" "Yes, and she'll get a monthly allowance from the state. Since she'll be living here, she won't need much," Mom confirmed. "They're pursuing child support, but it's like squeezing blood from a turnip," I muttered grimly. "That's good," I replied. "And the oncologist?" Daisy's expression darkened, signaling ominous news. "They found stage 4 cervical cancer," Mom disclosed. "It's spreading rapidly throughout her body." "Can it be treated?" I asked, grappling with mixed emotions. "Maybe," Mom responded cautiously, with Daisy's consent. They continued. "Survival odds are less than 20%. Treatment's an option, but no guarantees," Mom explained. "Doctors think it started out 4 years ago," Daisy admitted tearfully. "If caught. Earlier, my chances would have been over 90%. "That's terrible. Bruce didn't notice anything," I probed. "No, he never mentioned it," Daisy explained. "I noticed some changes, but I didn't want to worry him." "What kind of changes?" I asked delicately. "Closeness became painful," Daisy confessed. "We stopped altogether for a while." Redirecting the conversation, I said, "New medications might help." "Yes," Mom added. "They could improve her odds by 10 or 15%. "What's your plan?" I asked Daisy. "Fight. I'm not ready to give up," she declared. "And how long will treatment last?" I questioned Mom. "Up to a year, maybe longer," she replied. "Will Daisy stay here?" I pressed. "I think it's best. I'll care for her," Mom assured. Reluctantly, I agreed. I suppose that makes sense. Can you handle this? Mom asked. I glanced at Daisy, recalling our history. Memories flooded back of her callous actions with Bruce. Daisy noticed my change in demeanor. I know you don't trust me, but, she started. Understatement, I sharply interjected. If you injure my mother or cause trouble, I'll kick you out, cancer or not. Understand? Yes, Daisy replied quietly, tears welling. Mom intervened, suggesting dessert. I can help, I offered, but Mom declined. You two could use some time alone, she said, leaving. Daisy wiped her face. I started reading your book, she said. Was I that terrible? I have footage from that night, I revealed. Would you like to see it? Daisy declined, stunned. No wonder you despise me, she said, sobbing. It's all in the book, I continued. I imagined revenge for years. Daisy was horrified. Yolanda suggested exercise, Mom added, bringing apple pie. That's why you look so good now? Daisy asked. Yes, I confirmed. I've been doing martial arts and fitness. But you're still angry, Daisy observed. It's better, Mom reassured. 2 years ago, you wouldn't have even come through the door. I'm truly sorry, Mike. I really am. I knew it would hurt, but I didn't anticipate it would devastate you like this. That's why I gave you everything in the divorce. I thought it would aid in your recovery. When you didn't contest it, I assumed you'd be all right, Daisy explained. To be honest, my lawyer was taken aback when he saw your petition. He urged me to sign it swiftly, fearing you might reconsider, I confessed. Have you dated anyone since then? Daisy asked tentatively. Not really, I replied bluntly. Just a couple of drunken one-night stands, but that's about it. I don't even recall their names. I noticed my mother's eyebrows shoot up, a look of disgust crossing her face, but she held back her thoughts. At that moment, I didn't care about her reaction. Oh God, Daisy sighed. I don't know what to say. A sorry won't be enough, will it? No, I replied bitterly. We ate pie in silence, Daisy's hurt evident, and I avoided, looking at Mom's face. After saying goodbye, Mom walked me to the door where I spoke quietly. Are you sure you're doing the right thing, Mom? I asked. What about her family? Can't they help? I called her parents and sister, but they refused to help, Mom replied sadly. What a screwed up family, I muttered. You didn't abandon me, I told Mom. Despite turning bitter, family takes care of family. I agree, Mom said tearfully. What are Daisy's chances really? I asked. Mom looked at Daisy before answering. It's hard to say. Progress has been made in treatment, but it's uncertain. A lot depends on her will to live. Ignoring that, I expressed concern for my mom's well-being. What if she does something behind your back? I worried. I know you don't trust her, but she's at rock bottom right now. People with nothing have nothing to lose, I reasoned. Be careful. If you need anything, let me know, I urged. I will, Mom promised. Thanks for dinner. I'll be in touch. Love you, I said. Love you too, son, Mom replied, kissing my cheek. Please try to keep your emotions in check, Mom requested. Don't push her further, she pleaded. I'll try, I sighed heavily. That's all I ask, Mom said, and I promise not to play matchmaker. Thank you, I smiled before leaving. The next 2 months flew by as I tackled home projects and prepared for the upcoming school year. On Fridays, I visited my mom's house for dinner. I witnessed Daisy's chemotherapy taking a toll, weakening her. Despite the treatment's intent to heal, it seemed ineffective in her case. By mid-August, she lost all her hair, donning a stylish chemo cap. While my feelings for her remained unchanged, I made an effort to be polite, mainly for my mom's peace of mind. Daisy began receiving deductions from Bruce's paycheck, albeit small. She opened a bank account, with Mom overseeing the funds. Daisy insisted on sharing with Mom for expenses. Mom agreed, setting aside 10% for emergencies. On the eve of the new school year, I arrived at Mom's house to find an unfamiliar car parked outside. The sight of Bruce triggered an unsettling feeling. Mom and Daisy seemed apprehensive. Bruce appeared disheveled, a stark contrast to his former self. The restrained part of my mind reacted with restrained aggression. Observing Bruce's decline, he lacked his previous commanding presence, appearing unkempt in dirty jeans and a shirt. Well, look who it is, the arrogant teacher, Bruce sneered arrogantly. My animosity towards him had peaked. Though I'd never been in a physical altercation before, my martial arts training had taught me to avoid fights whenever possible. Even if you emerge victorious, the repercussions can linger for a lifetime. What's your business here, Bruce? I asked icily. I want the money that woman took from me, he growled. Took? I thought the court mandated a portion of your income for alimony, I stated evenly, though my gaze probably conveyed my disdain. It's all the same. They seized my funds and now I'm facing eviction because I can't pay rent, Bruce hissed. Thanks to her, you had the money to travel here from Milwaukee, I pointed out. You could have used it for rent. Don't play games, teacher. Maybe I should have taught you a lesson 10 years ago, he threatened. She stopped me, insisted I treat you with respect for looking after her all those years, Bruce threatened. How about you leave and we pretend none of this happened, I suggested cautiously, raising my hands in an attempt to defuse the situation that could lead to a violent confrontation, leaving me with bruises and a few well-timed counterattacks. But he likely didn't know Daisy's condition. She was ill, battling cancer, and she needed support. Cancer, huh? Is that another one of her lies? Bruce scoffed, placing his soda and sandwich aside before producing a revolver from behind him. Funny, I happen to have the cure for that, he taunted, aiming the weapon at Daisy. Bruce, please, my mom pleaded, gesturing towards her phone on the table. The emergency operator likely heard our entire exchange. Please, I've already called the police, they're on their way. I began to position myself between Bruce and Daisy, but he swiftly directed the weapon toward me. Desperation was evident in his eyes. Mentally, I retreated. I hadn't come this far, survived this much, to be senselessly shot by a cop. Stay put, teacher. Not one move, Bruce warned, his hands trembling. In that instant, we spotted flashing red and blue lights outside the front window and heard a voice over the intercom. Mr. Williams, this is the police. The house is surrounded. We're aware you're armed. Drop your weapon and come out with your hands up, the officer instructed. You should listen, I warned Bruce, who stared wide-eyed. How did they know about my weapon? Bruce inquired. I informed them. I saw it tucked in your waistband, Mom disclosed. And Mike's right, follow their orders. This is your final chance, Mr. Williams. Surrender the weapon and exit the premises, the officer commanded through the speaker. Glancing at us, Bruce seemed to grow increasingly uneasy. Our eyes met briefly, and I noticed his resolve waver. If you were wise, you'd comply, I advised. There won't be another warning. As the back door opened, 2 officers suddenly appeared in the room, pistols drawn, aimed at Bruce. Drop your weapons, one ordered. Bruce turned, eyes widening as he realized he was facing 2 loaded weapons. Recklessly, he raised his firearm, but the officers fired first. Despite the ringing in my ears, Daisy's scream pierced through, shocking me. 2 more officers entered the room as my mom reacted, clutching an heirloom. Frozen, I watched as officers attended to Daisy and my wounded mom, while 2 others knelt beside Bruce. 1. Officer confirmed Bruce's death, leaving me shaken. Despite feeling a mix of relief and resentment, I steadied my mom. Paramedics arrived, determining Bruce's fate and attending to Daisy. I offered to accompany my mom to the hospital. At the crime scene, detectives took our statement and advised us to leave. They assured us of securing the house and provided a cleaning service recommendation. Driving to the hospital, my mind spun with conflicting emotions. At the hospital, we navigated bureaucracy, eventually settling in the waiting area for Daisy's surgery. Finally, the doors parted and a doctor approached us. Mrs. Carpenter, he inquired. Yes, that's me, Mom confirmed. How's Daisy? Miss Williams is stable and improving. I anticipate she'll pull through the gunshot wound. Fortunately, the bullet passed through without hitting any critical organs. She's fortunate, the doctor informed us. Just a tad to the left, and it could have been fatal. Thank the Lord, Mom breathed a sigh of relief. She's lost considerable blood, and her compromised state due to cancer and chemotherapy isn't in her favor. However, we've detected something else and informed her oncologist, the doctor disclosed. Oh? What's that? Mom inquired. I'm aware she's undergoing chemotherapy, but we've detected what seems to be signs of infection in her system. I've ordered a battery of tests as a precaution, he explained. Oh dear, Mom sighed. Will she be all right? It's too early to say. She's currently sedated. We'll need to keep her here for a minimum of 3 days. May we visit her? Mom requested. I'm afraid not. Perhaps tomorrow morning at the earliest. Let me provide you with a card. You can reach this number anytime for updates and to learn her room assignment, he said, handing Mom the card. We drove back to Mom's house in silence, with her crying most of the way. My thoughts were consumed by the surreal situation. Daisy, whom I once harbored dark fantasies about, was now fighting for her life in the hospital. Despite feeling a pang of remorse, I pushed the thoughts aside. Arriving home, I noticed the crime scene tape discarded in the trash, and a note from the detective declaring the scene cleared. Mom wasted no time in cleaning up, while I disposed of the chair Daisy had been shot in. Upon my return, I found Mom on her knees, tears mixing with the blood as she scrubbed the floor. Offering help, she declined, determined to manage alone. I suggested she stay at my place, but she insisted on staying. Respecting her decision, I resolved to stay with her despite her protestations. I offered to cook dinner before we turned in. Sharing a knowing look, we agreed a glass of wine would be a fitting end to a tumultuous day. As she resumed cleaning, her movements became more frantic. Concerned about potential nightmares, we found solace in a glass of wine or sheer exhaustion, sleeping deeply until morning. We moved through the house quietly until the phone interrupted our somber atmosphere around 10. I retreated to the kitchen to give her privacy, and when she joined me minutes later, she relayed Daisy's condition, serious but stable, undergoing tests with an expected return to her room by mid-afternoon. Lost in thought, I barely registered any emotions. She interrupted my introspection, requesting a ride to the hospital at 2:30. I agreed, departing early to handle errands before meeting her at her house and proceeding to the hospital. After purchasing gifts for Daisy, including her favorite flowers and a book, Mom teased me playfully at the register, prompting me to defensively brush off any deeper sentiment. But her words lingered, reminding me that feelings, even complex ones, were valid. Afterward, we headed to Daisy's room. Though awake, she appeared drained. Mom planted a kiss on her cheek and passed her the purchased card. Her eyes sparkled when she noticed the flowers. "My favorites! You remembered!" she exclaimed, surprised. Her voice, though weak, held a pleasant tone. "Yes," I responded, extending the novel. "If I recall correctly, you were reading it when you left with Bruce," I added, my voice devoid of emotion, though a slight pang hit my gut. "Yes, I did read it, but never got to finish." "Thank you," she murmured softly, not meeting my gaze as she thumbed through the paperback. "Any updates?" Mom inquired. "Not yet," Daisy answered, shaking her head. She closed the book but held on to it tightly as if it were a cherished possession, nestling into it like a teddy bear. She added, "They said I probably won't hear anything for at least a day." "That's okay," Mom agreed. Then the nurse chimed in. "How are you feeling?" "Terrible," Daisy groaned. "I'm exhausted, my side and stomach ache." "They'll figure it out," Mom comforted. "And Bruce?" Daisy inquired, still avoiding my gaze. "He was pronounced dead at the scene," Mom informed her. "Good," Daisy stated firmly, finally showing some strength. "I'm glad he's dead." Mom's expression darkened, but she remained silent, gently patting Daisy's hand and nodding in understanding. I stayed quiet while the women conversed. Hearing my ex-wife denounce Bruce eased some of the pent-up animosity, yet it couldn't erase a decade of bitterness. A nurse entered, checking Daisy's vital signs and administering medication. "Time for your meds, Daisy," the nurse said, handing her a cup of pills. Daisy swallowed them with water, expressing exhaustion. "Call me Daisy," she requested, showing resilience despite her weariness. "I'll inform the staff," the nurse said, suggesting rest for Daisy. Mom inquired about test results, and the nurse assured they'd have news by tomorrow morning. After exchanging farewells, I noticed Daisy's longing glance as we left. I offered a faint smile before closing the door. After dropping off my mom, I returned home to tackle my weekend tasks. The following morning, we convened in Daisy's hospital room. Mom, a part-time volunteer, had arrived a couple of hours earlier. Soon after my arrival, 2 doctors entered. I was introduced to Dr. Samuels, Daisy's surgeon, and Dr. Kincaid, her oncologist. Though they tried to appear assured, their concern was palpable. "What's the update?" I inquired, eager for positive news despite their demeanor. Dr. Kincaid responded first. "Miss Williams is grappling with both peritonitis and diverticulitis, which can account for some of the symptoms you've mentioned previously." Dr. Samuels elaborated. "Mrs. Carpenter," he addressed my mom, taking over the report, "our scans have detected several large pockets of infection in Daisy's abdomen. Furthermore, we suspect her gallbladder is perforated and will need to be removed." "How did this occur?" I inquired, feeling my mom's hand tighten around mine. "There are likely multiple factors, but it appears she had an underlying condition exacerbated by cancer and chemotherapy medications," Dr. Kincaid responded. "What's the next step?" my mom asked softly. "She will eventually require surgery to eradicate the infection and repair the damage, but we'd like to allow her body more time to recover from the recent surgery she underwent. So, we'll keep her here on antibiotics for the next couple of weeks to monitor if the infection subsides naturally. Chemotherapy will be paused during this period," Dr. Samuels explained. "What are her odds?" I asked, striving to maintain composure. The doctors exchanged glances before replying. I didn't like the gravity in their expressions. "I won't sugarcoat it," Dr. Samuels began. "Without surgery, her prospects are grim. Her body is currently delicately balanced. Administering high doses of antibiotics could potentially disrupt her metabolism and further weaken her, potentially even leading to a fatal outcome. Although the current antibiotic regimen seems to have halted the infection spread and is gradually reducing it, it won't mend the damage. While there's no visible perforation in the bowel wall, she was likely on the brink of it when we intervened. Exploratory surgery aimed at identifying unseen issues carries significant risks at this point. Manipulating the intestines could inadvertently worsen the situation. Our goal is to cleanse the intestines of infection and mend any damage. She must be robust enough to endure surgery and chemotherapy afterward. Malnutrition has severely debilitated her, and she won't withstand chemotherapy until the infections are eradicated and her other bodily functions normalize. Peritonitis alone poses a grave threat, and coupled with cancer, he trailed off with a shrug. The surgery itself poses significant risks, Dr. Kincaid interjected. Very significant, considering the extent of infection in her abdomen and the damage to her internal organs. Her chances of survival are estimated to be between 30 and 40%. So without surgery, my chances are slim to none, queried Daisy solemnly. Though her eyes were wide and she appeared to be sweating, her voice remained steady. Unfortunately, that appears to be the case, confirmed Dr. Kincaid. However, once you recover from the surgery, you should be able to proceed with chemotherapy without complications. In that case, it seems we have no alternative but to proceed with the surgery, Daisy conceded weakly, sinking back onto the bed. Very well. We'll organize everything accordingly, declared Dr. Samuels. With their departure, Daisy broke into tears. Her mother embraced her, offering solace. Don't fret, Daisy. You have the finest medical team in the hospital on your side. Everything will work out, she reassured Daisy amid her sobs. I had much to contend with, and this wasn't the place for it. It was odd. Not long ago, I might have welcomed news of Daisy's demise, but now my emotions were in turmoil. I have to head out. School starts tomorrow, but I'll check in on you from time to time, I offered. Yeah, I'd appreciate that, Mike, Daisy exclaimed. Mom smiled at me. We left the room and I walked her to her car, waving as she drove away. Over the next 2 weeks, I kept my promise, visiting Daisy several times. We discussed various topics, from my teaching and students to her failed marriage with Bruce and our own failed marriage. We also delved into our emotions and the events that led us here. During one visit, I brought up her family. I'm curious, I began. What? Daisy asked. What's the deal with your family? Why do they dislike you so much? Mom reached out to them, but they want nothing to do with you. Remember when I mentioned they disowned me after the lawsuit? Daisy recalled. Yes, I remember, I replied. What I didn't tell you is they knew about Bruce from the start. They agreed to keep you in the dark, and in return, Bruce promised to support them in retirement. He even offered to buy them cruise tickets. And you and your sister knew about this? I asked, feeling anger rising. Daisy looked down in shame. Yes, she whispered before meeting my gaze again. It was another betrayal. I know, and I'm deeply sorry. So your family used you and Bruce, just like you used me, I observed, my tone icy. She looked miserable. I tempered my emotions. If you don't want the answer, don't ask the question. Mostly, Daisy admitted sorrowfully. Things went downhill after the lawsuit, and my family wanted nothing to do with me. That explains their treatment of me after you left, I remarked. It also sheds light on why you thought it was acceptable to use me while waiting for Bruce. Everyone seemed to have the upper hand except me. Reinforcing my belief that reconciliation with Daisy was unlikely, given all that had transpired, Daisy seemed to share this sentiment, showing no initiative to revive what we once had. However, as we reconciled, I glimpsed the woman I fell in love with, sparking hope. Surprisingly, my animosity towards her and Bruce lessened after his demise, although I still wished for his just punishment beyond this life. Mr. Smith granted me the day off for Daisy's surgery, arranging for a substitute teacher. At the hospital, I expressed my worries before she was wheeled into the operating room. I've said hurtful things and I'm sorry, I began. I hope you can overcome this. Daisy's weak smile surprised me. Thank you, Mike. I accept your apology. I'm sorry for what I've done to you, she confessed. I love you, and you've endured more than you should have. Promise me something, she implored. What? I inquired. Find someone you love no matter what, she sincerely urged. I agreed, feeling a sense of absolution. We need to proceed to the operating room, sir, the orderly interrupted. For one moment, I requested. Spontaneously, I kissed Daisy's cheek. You've got this, I reassured her. For a brief moment, she resembled the woman I married, prompting me to wonder if she ever truly loved me beyond my role as a provider. I rose, feeling a bit lightheaded as the orderly guided her gurney out of the room. That was kind of you, Mike, Mom murmured softly as we followed into the operating room. After she was wheeled inside, we settled in the waiting area. Hours passed while the surgery progressed. Attempting to focus on the TV proved futile. My thoughts remained fixated on the tumultuous events of the past decade. Mom crocheted quietly while I paced, drowning myself in one cup of machine-made coffee after another, trapped in a relentless cycle of memories. 6 hours later, Dr. Samuels emerged from the operating room with a troubling expression. He motioned for us to join him in a nearby room, where he sat across from us, visibly weary. I braced for bad news, fearing he might break down in tears. Mom's grip on my hand was so tight it made my fingers ache, and I anticipated his words before he uttered them. "I'm deeply sorry, Mrs. Carpenter, Mr. Carpenter. We did everything within our power for Daisy. However, the level of infection and damage to her internal organs was too severe," he conveyed with sorrow. Her body ceased functioning. She had signed a DNR and a form consenting to donate her body to cancer research. Despite our ethical efforts, once her heart stopped, we were unable to revive her. "Please accept my condolences for your loss." Instantly, tears streamed down Mom's face, and though I felt a tear welling up in my eye, I refused to let it fall. I embraced my mother as she wept, nodding in acknowledgement to the doctor. "Thank you for all your efforts," I expressed to him. We exchanged a handshake, and I noticed a tear escaping from his eye. Once Mom had composed herself, we walked back to Daisy's room in a daze. We packed her belongings in silence, knowing words were unnecessary. In the bedside table drawer, I discovered a small envelope labeled Mike in Daisy's handwriting. I opened it and unfolded the letter inside. "Mike," the letter commenced, "you will only read this if I do not survive. Thank you for being there for me, especially in these last weeks. You owe me nothing, but you and your mother stood by me when others deserted me. I realize what I did to you a decade ago was inexcusable, and I deeply regret causing you pain. Despite everything, a part of me still loves you, and I'm sorry for the turmoil my involvement with Bruce has caused me. I understand that you will never feel the same toward me, and I respect that. My hope is that my passing will bring you peace at last. With love, Daisy." The note left me trembling, tears streaming down my face as I showed it to my mom. It unleashed a torrent of emotions. We shared, crying and holding each other, the first time I'd wept since my father's passing 6 years ago. Packing Daisy's belongings, I realized a profound change within me. A decade of anger and bitterness evaporated, replaced by an unexpected calmness. Her passing seemed to break down walls of resentment, offering me a way out of the dark maze I'd been trapped in. Strangely, her passing brought healing. After leaving the hospital in a daze, we settled Daisy's things at my mom's house, sharing a sober dinner. Later, she handed me a photo of Daisy smiling in her mother's chair during chemotherapy, a memento to cherish. Asking about contacting Daisy's family, my mom offered to call, but I declined, recalling a previous difficult conversation. Instead, I promised to make the call once home, taking the number she provided. Calling Daisy's father, Fred, I was met with hostility, leaving me puzzled by his animosity, considering their refusal of support and retirement crews. "I regret to inform you that your daughter Daisy passed away during surgery today," I conveyed. "I don't have a daughter named Daisy," Fred grumbled. "Not anymore," I clarified. "Why are you calling?" Fred inquired. "I just thought you might want to know," I responded. "What do you want from me?" Fred questioned. "Are you expecting us to request her body or something?" I countered, "No, she donated her body to cancer research," I disclosed, barely containing my frustration. "Well, at least her life served a purpose," he growled. "Don't call here again." I heard him curse before terminating the call. Although I felt the urge to call back and vent my anger, I realized it would be futile. With a sigh, I dialed my principal's number and informed him of the news. "I'm sorry to hear that, Mike," he sympathized. "How are you holding up?" "I'm managing," I replied, "but I'll be okay." "Say, why don't you take the remainder of the week off, and I'll mark it as paid parental leave. I'll arrange for a substitute." "Thank you. I really appreciate it," I expressed. After concluding our conversation, I retrieved a beer from the fridge. As I opened the bottle, I gazed at the photo my mom had given me. "Here's to you, kid," I murmured, taking a deep sip. In June, I drove to the cemetery, always feeling uneasy among reminders of mortality. Parking under a large maple tree, I made my way to the monument. Despite its newness, it bore the name Williams, a decision I reluctantly accepted due to bureaucratic insistence. I placed a white carnation in the bronze flower tube beside the monument, reflecting on the decision to bury Daisy's ashes rather than scatter them. Bruce, on the other hand, lay in a neglected corner, marked only by a simple concrete block with a serial number. Afterward, I poured a bottle of urine on his grave, a solitary act of closure. If anyone caught me urinating on his grave, I'd have some explaining to do. After a few minutes of reflection, I bid him farewell. All my tears were shed last week at her burial. Despite reaching out to Daisy's family and friends, I figured if Joe DiMaggio could honor Marilyn for 2 decades, I could lay Daisy to rest and leave her carnations. Sometimes, amidst the grayness, I felt neither sad nor happy, but like an empty blackboard waiting to be filled. Heading back to my car, I noticed 2 other mourners nearby, a woman in a neat black dress, her long blonde hair braided, and a young boy in a camouflage jacket. Approaching them, I glanced at the sign, Ryan G. Anger, Sergeant, USMC. The woman looked at me with fear in her blue eyes. "I'm sorry," I murmured, not wanting to intrude. Before she could respond, the boy said, "I miss him so much," his eyes reflecting the same shade of blue as his mother's, his words laden with longing, perhaps seeking solace or reaching out for help. He must have been a handsome man if he resembled his father. I knelt down, pulling out a notepad and pen from my pocket, tools I used more than my phone's note function. "Here, son," I said, offering them to him. "Write him a note and tuck it in that crack next to the marker. He'll get it." He hugged me, took the notebook and pen, and began writing. As he did, his mother gazed at me with genuine gratitude. Suddenly, I heard 2 soft chuckles, one in each ear, a female and a male. Then the female voice whispered, "Keep your promise." In that moment, I sensed June would no longer be a struggle for me.
Hello, everyone. My name is Linda. I had never imagined, in my wildest dreams, that I'd be reunited with my father, let alone discover he'd left me $50 million. Growing up, my father had always been a mystery, disappearing from my life when I was young. He rarely reached out, and by the time I was old enough to ask questions, he was just a faint memory. But then, out of the blue, I received a letter from his lawyer saying he had passed away and left everything to me. The inheritance was overwhelming. I could barely process the news. $50 million. It felt surreal, as if I were living someone else's life. My husband, Daniel, was equally stunned. At first, he seemed supportive, but over time, his excitement turned into something darker. "Think of all the things we can do with this money," he'd say, his eyes almost glinting with greed. I wanted to use the inheritance wisely, invest it in our future, but Daniel's tone made me uneasy. His excitement didn't feel like ours, it felt like his. As the days went by, Daniel's obsession with the inheritance only grew. He'd bring up plans he'd never mentioned before, buying a mansion, luxury cars, and even talking about investing in risky business ventures he had no experience in. I reminded him gently that we needed to be cautious. "This money could be our security for the rest of our lives," I told him. But he brushed me off, as if my concerns didn't matter. One evening, I came home from running errands and found Daniel pacing around the house, his expression tense. "I've been thinking," he said, "we need to act fast with this money before anyone else tries to come for it. You never know with family lawyers and those so-called relatives." His words chilled me. Why would anyone come for what was legally mine? Daniel's paranoia was starting to scare me, but I tried to keep my cool. A few days later, I realized the bank account where the inheritance was deposited was completely empty. Panic surged through me, and I confronted Daniel. He didn't even try to deny it. He looked at me calmly and said, "I moved the money. You don't need to worry about it." The betrayal hit me like a ton of bricks. My own husband had taken my inheritance without even asking. Anger flared up, but I felt trapped. This was the man I trusted, yet he'd taken everything from me in one selfish move. I felt a storm of emotions brewing inside me: betrayal, anger, disbelief. But I had to think clearly. Confronting Daniel directly about the money would likely push him further, maybe even make him reckless. He was still my husband, but he was a different person now, a man blinded by greed. So, I played along. I acted as if I accepted his decision, pretending to believe he'd moved the money for our own safety. I feigned understanding, telling him I trusted his judgment. It was the hardest thing I'd ever done, swallowing my pride and hiding my anger. But deep down, I was plotting my own way to reclaim what was rightfully mine. The first step was to gather evidence. Late at night, while he was asleep, I began digging through his files, checking his emails, and tracing his bank transactions. It was terrifying, knowing that if he caught me, I'd have to explain myself. But I had to take that risk. What I found was worse than I'd expected. Not only had he transferred the money to his own private account, but he'd also started using it to gamble and invest in questionable ventures. I realized then that this wasn't just about greed. He was reckless, willing to throw away my father's legacy for his own gain. Each discovery was like a stab to my heart. The man I once loved and trusted was tearing apart everything I had left of my father. But I knew I had to stay calm. If I confronted him too soon, he could hide the money somewhere I couldn't reach, or worse, spend it all before I could even get to it. I had to be patient, careful. Over the next few weeks, I gathered more evidence, documenting every transfer, every shady deal, every reckless purchase he made. During the day, I kept up my act, playing the part of the supportive wife, watching as he talked about all the grand plans he had for our future. I nodded and smiled, all while feeling the fury bubbling beneath the surface. Then, just when I thought I had enough proof, I noticed something strange. Daniel had started acting paranoid. He'd changed the passwords on his devices frequently, and he seemed jumpy whenever he saw me around his computer or phone. It became clear to me that he was suspecting something. It was time to make my move. I hired a lawyer in secret, someone who specialized in financial disputes and asset recovery. Together, we devised a plan to secure the money and bring Daniel's actions to light. My lawyer assured me that with the evidence I'd collected, I had a strong case. I felt a glimmer of hope, but I knew this was just the beginning. The day finally came for me to put my plan into action. My lawyer and I had arranged a meeting with a forensic accountant to track down every cent Daniel had moved. The goal was simple: to freeze his accounts and prevent him from spending anything further. I also filed a formal complaint, detailing how Daniel had taken the money without my consent. The process was grueling, and I knew it wouldn't be easy to keep all of this a secret from him for long. Just as I anticipated, Daniel started noticing changes. He'd call his bank only to be told that certain funds were on hold. He'd try to make purchases, only to have his transactions declined. His confusion quickly turned into anger. One evening, he confronted me, his face twisted in fury. "What have you done?" he spat, his eyes wild. "Why are the accounts frozen?" I looked him in the eye and calmly said, "I did what I had to do. You took my father's inheritance without asking me, Daniel. You crossed a line." He was speechless for a moment, but then he laughed, a cold, bitter laugh. "You think you can win this? You're nothing without me." His words stung, but I stood my ground. "Maybe that's what you think, but I'm stronger than you know. You've taken enough from me. Now it's my turn." In that moment, I saw a flicker of fear in his eyes. He realized that I wasn't the woman he could manipulate so easily anymore. I'd changed, and he knew it. Daniel's arrogance faded, replaced by desperation. Over the next few days, he tried to intimidate me, threatening to ruin my reputation and even making claims that I'd be nothing without him. But his words no longer held power over me. I'd already decided I wasn't backing down. My lawyer moved quickly, securing court orders that would protect my assets. Every attempt Daniel made to regain control was met with legal resistance, blocking him at every turn. I could see the frustration mounting, and he became erratic, lashing out at anyone who tried to talk to him. He was spiraling, and I knew I had him where I wanted. Then, I initiated the next phase of my plan. Using the evidence of his reckless gambling and fraudulent investments, I filed for divorce, citing financial abuse and betrayal. This wasn't just about getting the money back, it was about exposing him for who he truly was. The court case would be public, and all his dirty dealings would come to light. The night before our first court hearing, Daniel showed up at my door, looking disheveled and defeated. "Please," he said, his voice barely above a whisper. "Let's talk. We don't have to go through this." But I was done with his lies and manipulation. "We're beyond that, Daniel," I replied coldly. "You made your choice when you took what wasn't yours. Now, you'll face the consequences." The courtroom was tense as our case began. I felt a mix of nerves and resolve as I sat across from Daniel, watching his confidence crumble. My lawyer laid out every piece of evidence we'd collected, the unauthorized transfers, the gambling records, the shady investments. As each detail was revealed, I could see Daniel shrinking in his seat, his face pale. When it was Daniel's turn to speak, he tried to paint me as a paranoid wife who'd overreacted. But the evidence was too strong. His web of deceit was unraveling, and the judge saw right through his excuses. I felt a sense of justice finally within reach. Then came the moment I had been waiting for. My lawyer asked the court to award me full control of the inheritance, citing Daniel's financial misconduct and betrayal. The judge agreed, freezing his remaining assets and granting me every last penny he had taken. As I walked out of the courtroom, I felt a weight lift off my shoulders. It wasn't just about the money, it was about reclaiming my life and my dignity. Daniel had taken so much from me, but I had fought back and won. However, I wasn't done. I wanted to make sure he understood the depth of his betrayal. I wanted him to feel the consequences of his actions long after the money was returned. Once the court proceedings ended, Daniel was left with almost nothing. His accounts were frozen, his reputation ruined, and any allies he'd once had abandoned him. But for me, this wasn't just about watching him fall. I wanted to rise above and prove to myself that I could rebuild stronger than ever. With the inheritance back in my control, I made some wise investments. I worked with financial advisors, carefully choosing projects that would not only grow my wealth but also secure a stable future. For the first time, I felt empowered, not because of the money itself, but because I'd taken charge of my own life. Meanwhile, Daniel's life continued to spiral downward. He couldn't hold down a job, and word of his courtroom scandal spread fast. He became a ghost of the man he once was, stumbling through life without the wealth and reputation he had once held over me. People who had once flocked to him for his apparent success now avoided him, seeing him for what he truly was. And as my wealth grew, I started using some of it to help others. I set up a foundation in my father's name, offering scholarships and aid to those in need. It felt like a way to honor his legacy and give back, using the inheritance to bring light into the world rather than feeding greed and selfishness. Each day, I grew stronger, and Daniel's influence faded further from my life. I was no longer defined by his betrayal. Instead, I was building a life I could be proud of, a life he could never take away from me again. Months passed, and my life blossomed in ways I hadn't thought possible. The foundation was thriving, my investments were yielding returns, and I had finally found peace. I was living a life filled with purpose, one where I was in full control of my destiny. Then, one day, I received news that Daniel had tried to contact my lawyer, pleading for a settlement or, at the very least, a portion of the inheritance. He was desperate, drowning in debts from his gambling, and with no one left to turn to. My lawyer advised me that I could ignore him entirely or use this moment to finally close that chapter of my life. I decided to meet him one last time. We met in a small conference room at my lawyer's office. Daniel looked nothing like the man I once knew. He was haggard, his suit wrinkled, and his eyes hollow. He barely looked at me, his once arrogant demeanor replaced with a broken shell of a person. "I'm sorry," he mumbled, almost inaudibly. "I was wrong. I don't have anyone left. I thought I could handle it, but..." I felt a pang of sadness, but not for him, for the memories of the life I thought we would have together. But I knew better than to let sentiment sway me. Daniel, I said firmly, you had everything, and you chose greed over love. I gave you chances to do the right thing, but you only cared about yourself. He looked up, and for a moment, I saw a glimmer of the man he used to be, but I knew that image was long gone. Please, just a small portion, he begged. But I'd already made up my mind. Goodbye, Daniel, I said, standing up. This is the last time we'll see each other. I've moved on, and it's time for you to do the same. As I walked out of that room, I felt a sense of closure wash over me. I was done with him, done with the pain he'd caused, and ready to live a life where I was truly free. From that day forward, I thrived, my wealth multiplying, my foundation growing, and my heart finally at peace. I had become much richer, not just in wealth, but in spirit, resilience, and self-worth, far more than I could have ever imagined.
I vividly remember the day I left my hometown. It was a crisp autumn morning, and the air was filled with the scent of fallen leaves. I packed everything I valued into my old pickup truck, determined to start fresh, far from the painful memories. Leaving wasn't easy, but it was necessary. Betrayal and deceit had ruined my life, and the only way to heal was to distance myself from those who hurt me. After hours of driving, I found a quaint, sleepy town that seemed perfect for a new beginning. The locals were friendly, the pace was slow, and the town had a charming appeal. I discovered a small, rundown gas station and garage that had been on the market for years. Seeing its potential, I made a low offer, which was surprisingly accepted. This property became the foundation for rebuilding my life and business. One Saturday afternoon, I sat quietly in my favorite tavern, enjoying the peace. This tavern became my sanctuary shortly after moving here. I bought the local gas station and repair shop at a bargain price, seeing its untapped potential. The previous owner was eager to sell after it sat on the market for 2 years. It was the perfect place for a fresh start, helping me leave my past behind. The first thing I did was build a large retail store facing the gas station to supply the town after the only grocery store closed at 7 p.m. I moved the tanks so the pumps were visible from the store, which left plenty of parking spaces for customers. The store was busiest from 7 p.m. to midnight and was open 24/7. The garage at the back of the lot was open from 8 a.m. to 5 p.m., 5 days a week, with special projects on Saturdays. Although the bar was initially upset when we started selling basic liquor, it eventually provided a good income and created needed jobs in the community. The business became very successful after restructuring the store's internal merchandising, thanks to a woman I hired. It quickly repaid the equity loan and required doubling the staff due to high demand. On Friday and Saturday nights, we sold lots of junk food to bar patrons, and on Sundays, we sold plenty of cold beer at reasonable prices. I was sipping a double shot of Jack Daniels with ice water and lemon, having just finished replacing the steering column in an old truck, a family heirloom. It took me 8 months to find the part and fabricate some fixtures. His family had driven this truck since the 40s, and he had no plans to stop. If he could, he would be buried in it. 4 to 7 was the best time at the bar since most regulars had already had dinner. In a couple of hours, the place would be filled with a musical crowd. Farmers brought their daughters for after-work fun. In my 6.5 years here, I built a solid reputation and made many friends. The locals looked out for each other and kept me informed of anything unusual. I came to the bar once a week, always on Saturdays, for a drink before heading home. It was my quiet time to gather my thoughts. I saw them walk in and wished I hadn't. They ruined a perfect day. The woman was my ex's twin sister, and the young man with her was once my son. It brought back memories I didn't want. I realized you can't see evil when you live with it. The boy had grown up and looked more like his biological father. This proved the truth always comes out. Why were they looking for me now? They chatted with the bartender, showed him a picture, and then left. I was grateful for my long, unkempt hair, beard, and mustache, which made me look different, especially since I had lost weight. No one noticed the message I sent, which simply said, "Come home when I can." About a half hour later, the bartender came over and sat at my table. "What did they want, Tom?" I asked. "They wanted to give you a message. They heard a rumor you live here and came to check it out," Tom replied. "They said a woman named Willa is dying of cancer and wants to make peace." I asked for your picture, pretending not to recognize your name. Who are they? And what do they want? I took out a cigarette, ripped off the filter, and lit it. The woman is my ex-wife's twin sister. The young man is my ex-wife's illegitimate son, whom she passed off as mine for years. Based on your experience, do you think they were telling the truth? I asked. From their body language, I'd say they're partly honest, but hiding something big, Tom replied. I nodded. My ex-wife and her sister had always been deceptive, appearing genuine while betraying me. Tom went back behind the bar. My thoughts drifted to nearly 7 years ago when I left, promising not to return for another 7 years. They laughed at me, thinking I was a fool. They learned a hard lesson that day because they never saw or heard from me directly again. They didn't believe how serious or hurt I was. They thought I was just mad at their joke. They had no idea that a few weeks earlier I discovered our youngest child was my brother-in-law's son. That revelation started my journey to this moment. A family member who had seen Willa and Tammy, the evil twins, betray me too often, provided the proof. She called them black witches practicing pure evil. Earlier that week, before I left, we discovered a new insurance policy on me with double indemnity for accidental pass-away, totaling $4 million if I died. A wise old woman told me to flee. When I left for my work truck, they had no clue. It was already packed with everything I wanted from my 16-year marriage. I drove away without looking back and ended up 2 states away. Part of this was my fault since I got Willa pregnant when she was 16 and I was 18. My family convinced me to marry her, and soon we had 2 more kids. They thought it was hilarious. Willa told our daughters, "Your father will come back when he cools off. He needs to regain his sense of humor." A few hours later, a sheriff's car arrived at the house. Willa greeted him at the door. "Are you Mrs. Willa Racine?" he asked. When she said yes, he replied, "Mom, you've just been served." She laughed, thinking it was a joke. But when she opened the envelope, she realized I had dissolved our marriage without a second thought. The grand dame told me she was shocked. My attorney listed all our assets and liabilities, including a DNA report showing the affair lasted a year. The divorce petition included details, receipts, and photos from their hotel meetings. In the envelope was a letter revealing I was suing her husband for child support, infidelity, and defamation. Their laughter stopped. The joke was no longer on me. I had the last laugh. Their joke was that I was only good for making money. Everything I touched seemed to turn to gold, so Willa and the kids were spoiled and never needed anything. Later, Willa found out I had sold 3 of our businesses, paid off all debt, and sold our 2 apartment buildings for a profit. I canceled all credit cards, removed my name from bank accounts, and signed over my half of the house to her. I took half our worth in cash, reducing our cash flow from $10,000 a month to 0. Willa's sister learned the cost of using me. My attorney froze their assets before they got the subpoena, leaving them broke after the divorce. My attorney called Willa in after the divorce and reimbursed her for 1/4 of their losses. "Why would he do that?" she asked. My lawyer replied, "For him, it was never about the money. It was about principle. He hopes this money gives you a chance to start over and learn from your experience." Willa refused to agree to the divorce without speaking to me, leaving us legally separated but not divorced. I had no need to talk to someone who lied to me for years. She had to work for the first time, learning that money disappears quickly without income. I had my attorney forward important mail to a rented FedEx mailbox, which was then sent to my work address weekly. I did this knowing that Willa and her sister loved to manipulate and plan revenge. I knew they would eventually try to get back at me. It wasn't a question of if, but when. Their family didn't believe in leaving things be, and my absence would upset them. The longer this went on, the worse their payback would be. They wouldn't let it go easily. Until now, I thought I had succeeded in escaping. With Tammy's appearance, I realized their game wasn't over. I finished my drink and left through the back door, in case they were watching the front. I crossed the empty lot behind the house and walked around the block to my pickup. As I was unlocking the door, a man approached and said, "You're a hard man to find, mister." "Arthur, Seth Racine, no doubt," I said. "How do you know that? My name is Peter Edwards." "Your oldest daughter, Connie, is my wife," he replied. "That could be a blessing or a curse," I said, "if she acts like her mother, so why are you here?" "I came looking for you," he said. "Some things need to be settled." "That would be the case if your mother-in-law would just sign the divorce agreement," I said. "What divorce agreement?" Peter asked in surprise. I told him to follow me. We drove through town, then onto a long driveway leading to a farmhouse. Inside my home office, I showed him the divorce papers and let him make copies. Peter didn't need to know that I didn't live there. I had built it for the Grand Dame, hoping she would eventually leave her old home. Peter was a pleasant-looking, confident, and seemingly educated young man. I wondered if he was who he claimed or part of Willa and Tammy's scheme. He used my Wi-Fi to download files onto his laptop. All important records were stored there, with a master copy in a safety deposit box. He was interested in a copy of the sheriff's report Willa signed when served with the summons. He managed to print a damaging letter from Willa's attorney to mine, acknowledging the agreed property division, but refusing to finalize the divorce without my in-person meeting. While Peter worked, I observed his expressions and saw that he was learning new information. My paperwork contradicted what he believed. "Do you think Connie knows?" Peter asked. "That's something you'll have to find out," I replied. "Here's a question for you. Is Willa really dying of cancer?" "Who told you that?" Peter asked. "Tammy and Seth told a bartender that today. But I know Willa is fine. She's in a common law marriage with her former lawyer and is expecting his second child." Peter said, "She's the one who asked me to find you to start the divorce. She claims it's necessary so she can remarry." He called his wife and put it on speakerphone so I could hear. "Connie, did you know your mother lied about the divorce not being finalized?" Peter asked. "What are you talking about?" Connie replied. "Mom told us Dad abandoned us and cleaned out whatever was left before leaving town. If it wasn't for our stepfather, we wouldn't have survived." "I'm sending you the legal file," said Peter. "Read it and contact me as soon as possible." While they talked, I grabbed 2 bottles of Bud, opened them, and put one in front of him. "Why didn't you tell my daughter you found me?" I asked. "Connie and I have only been married 2 years, and we just had a son 3 months ago. For now, I'm not going to tell anyone I found you," Peter said. "Everyone thinks I'm investigating a case." He showed me his badge, confirming he was a police officer for the Paradise Police Department. I checked the department's webpage on my laptop, proving he was telling the truth. "It was the accident report from a few months ago that led me to you," Peter explained. "Connie wrote a report on your disappearance, which was forwarded to the wanted list. The insurance company informed me of the ruling in your favor." "So why didn't you tell Connie you found me?" I asked again. "After reviewing your file, it became clear something else might be going on," Peter said. "I wondered what happened to the $250,000 cash Willa was supposed to get along with the house deed. And why are they all lying about what really happened?" "Yeah, sounds like I've been fed lies too," I said as his phone rang. "It's my wife. I'll put it on speaker," Peter said. "Please keep it down." "Hi, honey," Connie said. "Where did you get all this from? Is it true? We've been lied to for years. Seth doesn't know his origins, and neither do I. My sister Karen will be shocked. Mom chastised her for defending Dad. They don't speak anymore. This story contradicts everything we've been told. Mom and Auntie gave Dad no choice. They've been manipulating his life for years. What bothers me is that the divorce isn't finalized because Mom won't sign it. What's really going on?" "It's true. I got the information from your father's lawyer's widow. I had to go out of state to find her. Her husband kept duplicates of all his records. From the paperwork, it looks like your mother was served with a divorce petition the same day he left," Peter said. "I wrote a note for Connie to talk to her great-aunt Josie if she was still alive." Peter nodded. "Pete, it's crucial to find my father now," Connie said. "He deserves to be free of Mom and her schemes, at least to finalize the divorce. What happened to the money she got? Why did she have to sell the house if it was hers? The more I look into this, the more I wonder what's going on and why she planned to sue him for desertion as soon as she found him. Ask my sister to watch our son a bit longer, and you talk to Aunt Josie about what we found. Maybe she'll open up," Peter said. "This must stay between us for now. It looks like there may be serious fraud. Why has your mother been slandering your father for years? I'll need to talk to the district attorney. The $250,000 cash disappeared once it reached your father's lawyer. Don't tell your sister yet. If the DA investigates, it's best no one else knows." I got up to get us some servings, giving Peter privacy until he finished his call. "Why do you want Connie to talk to Aunt Josie?" Peter asked. "Josie gathered all the information about Willa and George's affair," I said. "She never married but watched over the family like a mother, raising her only daughter. Being a single mom changed her perspective. She thought Tammy and Willa conspired and used George and me, but their ultimate goal is unclear." "If it's true, why?" Peter asked. "Aunt Josie's granddaughter Jody wants her to move in with her, but Josie insists on waiting until the truth comes out. Jody visits with her 2 sons. Jody leads a very withdrawn life," I said. Socializing with Willa and Tammy takes a toll on everyone. They've used people most of their lives. It wasn't until Josie gave me the material that I realized this. "Do you want to ask me about your children before I leave?" Peter asked. "Not until I know you're who you say you are," I replied. This could be another part of their game. Look into the sudden pass away of my lawyer, because if she's planning to sue me, what makes her think she can win? Peter's face turned white, realizing what kind of people he had married. We decided to trust each other enough to exchange numbers. He promised to keep me informed. I walked him to the door, shook his hand, and said goodbye. After he left, I cleaned up, locked the apartment, and took the long way home to ensure I wasn't followed, giving me time to think. My life had improved since putting the past behind me. Did I want to relive it all again? Knowing Willa and Tammy, I had to prepare for what was coming, as they'd go to any length for money. As soon as I walked through the door, 2 little kids grabbed my legs. I picked up my 3- and 4-year-olds, the apples of my eye, just like their mother. I felt blessed to have all 3 of them in my life. My wife, Jody, called out that dinner was almost ready, so I went to wash up. Over dinner, I told her about my day since closing the store. I couldn't have imagined my life turning out like this when I left Paradise almost 7 years ago. I promised my grandmother, Josie, that I would keep in touch, and I did, calling her every Sunday. About 1.25 years ago, she called me for help. Her granddaughter, Jody, needed to escape a failed marriage and find a safe place to start over. Jody, 10 years younger than me, had no children and lived on an army base out of state. I didn't know much about her, but I owed Josie and was glad to help. It took me a week to find and partially furnish a 2-bedroom apartment for her in a small town, which was nearly impossible without a friend's help. When I arrived to pick up Jody, she had quit her job, emptied her bank accounts, and packed her bags. Her husband was about to enlist in the Army after his last 2-week training exercise. I quietly arrived around 8 in the evening with a rented U-Haul truck. With the help of a few neighbors and friends, we moved everything she wanted into the truck. I left her town in under 4 hours, refusing to say where I was from for safety. As we drove back, Jody and I started to get to know each other. Late that night, she got a call from her grandmother. I smiled when she said, "Yes, Grandma, Art picked me up. You could have warned me he's a wild bushman who might look half decent if he cleaned up." The next day, Josie contacted Jody's attorney to have all her legal documents sent to my FedEx box. Jody warned that her soon-to-be ex-husband could cause trouble, so I took steps to protect her. Jody then took over managing my store and proved to be an excellent manager, making successful changes and prioritizing customer needs. Her personality attracted many new clients, and she established a well-organized, problem-free staff. Josie had to get a restraining order against Jody's ex due to his constant threats. He was dishonorably discharged and moved back to my old hometown, thinking Jody would be there. To keep unwanted attention at bay, Jody wore a diamond ring, which helped her adjust to her new life. She handled banking and bookkeeping, gaining everyone's acceptance as I had introduced her. Jody's honesty and personality made her wonderful, and her long black hair was often hidden from her face. When asked about her ring, she replied, "I'm sure you'll figure it out," sparking rumors that she was my future mail-order bride. She started bringing me lunch on Saturdays, as I often forgot to eat while working, resulting in weight loss. Our relationship grew naturally. Everyone assumed we were a couple, and Josie kept us updated on events back home. We became curious when we learned Jody's ex was friendly with Tammy. The day Jody's divorce was finalized, our relationship deepened. We celebrated with friends at the local bar, sharing our first kiss during a slow dance under dim lights. 6 months later, we moved in together. While the kids were bathing, I shaved off my beard and mustache, leaving only stubble. The kids watched in amazement. I soaped my face and theirs with the bowl and brush Jody bought me for Christmas, much to their delight. Jody walked in, surprised to see the kids giggling with soapy faces as I finished shaving. "It looks like Daddy would look like you with a clean face," Jody teased. "Should I cut his hair too?" Both toddlers eagerly said, "Yes." I laughed and said, "I'll let the barber handle that on Monday." "No, I'll do it myself before you change your mind," Jody insisted. After drying off the kids and getting them dressed for bed, they sat at the kitchen table and watched Jody cut my hair. By the time she finished, I barely recognized myself in the mirror. I told Jody she did a great job. She sent me to shower off the loose hair while she cleaned up. During this, her grandmother called to say Connie had just left. Jody believed her grandmother was ready to confront the family, straightening things out. Connie learned that my 3 children were supposed to receive $600 each per month from annuities I had set up for child support. but they hadn't received any of it. The next week, I endured jokes from everyone about my new look. People asked Jody if she had to blackmail me into joining normal society. Jody humorously replied that I had promised to bathe at least 3 times a week. Most got the joke, some didn't. It was interesting to see how people acted when they believed they were superior. Bird of Paradise informed me that I would be sued in civil court for child abandonment, desertion, and back child support. Jody and I found this amusing, thinking a judgment would lead to a collection service trying to find me. When the mailman broke the news, he also found it funny. His boss and the DA hired an attorney to represent me, using my situation to piece things together. Peter estimated that Willa and Tammy had stolen over $48,000 from each of our children. They re-examined my former attorney's sudden pass-away, turning it into an open criminal case. Jody's ex-husband became a person of interest. If the findings were true, Willa and Tammy faced 7 to 10 years in prison, and Willa's former attorney, now her common-law husband, could be disbarred. The lawyer they hired for me would be paid by them, and I needed to stay hidden to help build a stronger case. We had a few weeks of peace. Then Josie called Sunday night, informing us that paperwork would be filed on Monday. She emailed me everything she had collected over 7 years, including notarized statements, videotape conversations, and names of attorneys for a countersuit. A $2 million accident insurance policy caught my eye, explaining some missing money. Jody found out it had been purchased 6 months before I left. We spent half the night forwarding information to the DA, certain this was a setup to lure me back. The next morning, Jody called the recommended attorneys and picked one, sending them everything along with a retainer. As soon as Willa's team filed the lawsuit, I would serve them before receiving it. On Friday morning, Jody called me. Josie was on her way with guests, having left Thursday night and stayed overnight at a hotel. This indicated things were heating up. Jody and I decided to close the store on Saturday and have a long weekend with family. Peter was riding with Connie and their son. All Connie knew was that they were visiting Jody. Around 7 p.m., we saw a Ford Explorer and Escape pull up in the driveway. 4 adults got out of the cars. Jody noticed my concern and took my hand. My truck was hidden in the garage, so no one knew I was there. "Who's that with Josie?" Jody asked. "That's Peter, his wife Connie holding their baby, and Karen, my second oldest," I replied. "Are you ready for this?" "As ready as I'll ever be," I said. Jody, holding our youngest, opened the front door. We all came out to greet our guests. Karen burst into tears upon seeing me. I handed my son to his great-grandmother and hugged Karen tightly. Connie handed her son to Peter and joined us. My daughters had grown into lovely ladies, and seeing them together was unforgettable. "Good to see you again, Peter," I said, shaking his hand. After introductions, Jody served a huge dinner. Beef shoulder, mashed potatoes, gravy, scones, Yorkshire pudding, string beans, and hot apple pie for dessert. After the kids settled, we started discussing everything. "First of all, Art, is it okay if I call you Dad?" Peter asked. I nodded. "Then, Dad, the DA believes Jody's ex's car was involved in your lawyer's accident. We're doing a paint comparison with the current owner's car. If it matches, he'll be charged with manslaughter," Peter explained. "The fire that destroyed his office the same night was treated as arson. He was seen in the background on video. Since Willa and her attorney sealed the divorce papers, they think there are no documents to prove what happened. They filed a lawsuit against you this week." Jody looked at me and burst into tears. "I always thought you were overprotective when you moved me here, but now I see you weren't. I thought your questions to my grandmother were excessive, but now I realize you needed to understand who we were dealing with before making a plan." "Willa and Tammy received your lawsuit on Thursday," Josie said. "They must have realized I was communicating with you. We feared they'd start tormenting me, so we came here quickly." "Grandma, we got your house ready," Jody said. "It's furnished, so you just need clothes." "I brought most of it in the car," Josie said. "Connie will ship the rest, including antiques. I gave her power of attorney to sell the house and furniture. It was time to leave paradise. I'll drive back with Peter and Connie and rent a truck to haul everything out," I said. "It's time to see if our suspicions are correct." "What suspicions?" asked Peter. "The lawsuit against me is a ploy to lure me out," I said. "With $2 million in accidental pass-away insurance, it's clear my former attorney's pass-away was a test." Peter, Connie, Karen, and Josie's faces turned white as they realized the truth. "They were planning your pass-away, Dad," Connie said. "You knew it before you left town." I had a good idea at the time, but even my lawyer didn't believe me. I replied with a broad smile. He experienced firsthand that I was right. Peter excused himself to make important calls. This gave my daughters, my wife, and me time to catch up. Jody found pictures of me from when we first met. Both daughters admitted they wouldn't have recognized me. When Peter returned, everyone fell silent. Willa will be taken into custody after the holiday, Peter said. We can hold her for 48 hours before charging her with 3 counts of theft for stealing annuities from her children. We'll slow down the process so she won't get a bond hearing immediately, Peter explained. Dad, if you can fly in on Wednesday, rent a U-Haul and visit some old places to get noticed. Tell anyone who asks that you're here to pack Josie's things. This way, Willa will have to communicate from jail. The district attorney confirmed your suspicions were right. We'll have police protection for you at Josie's house until everything is resolved. Peter, are you using my children's father as bait to lure out my cousins? Jody asked. What assurance do I have that he won't become a sufferer? I looked at Jody, and she saw my determination. Damn, you'll do it without hesitation, no matter what I think, she said. Jody knew me better than I knew myself. Jody, Art has always been like that. That's why I called him to save you from your ex, Josie said. Art never asks anyone to do what he wouldn't do himself. He wants to rid us of those witches for good. My only fear is Art going back into danger, Jody replied, smiling. If Art were a boxer, he'd be a world title holder, Josie said. He's fast on his feet and can outthink them. Willa and Tammy have no idea he knows anything. Ladies, relax. I'll be in Peter's hands, I said. If anything happens to me, remember he'll have to answer to Connie, my daughter. Peter just nodded, knowing the risks of my return to paradise. Later, while the women were deep in conversation, Peter and I talked. The DA thinks Jody's ex will make his move once he knows you're in town. He'll be furious knowing you rescued Jody from her terrible marriage, Peter said. Willa will learn you're here from a planted informant in the city jail early Thursday morning. If he's caught in the act, will he spill everything to save himself? I asked. Based on his military background, he's always admitted responsibility when caught. He's a follower, not a leader, so I expect him to give up easily. He sticks with Willa and Tammy because he's easily manipulated, Peter replied. The sign read, Welcome to City of Refuge, population 34,823. It confirmed that the city council had declared the laws of the United States didn't apply here. It was like the Wild West, with justice depending on what the local authorities decided. Law-abiding citizens were prosecuted, while illegals were ignored, reflecting a skewed version of progressivism. The working class paid for the sins of others to please those in power who wanted lower wages and cheaper labor. Many actions were taken to provide that opportunity, requiring those in power to look the other way. Not much had changed here in almost 7 years. Aside from the freshly paved main street, everything looked the same. I decided my first stop should be my old favorite place, if it still existed. Thankfully, Bob and Betty's Burger Bar was still around, looking the same but freshly painted. I pulled into the parking lot, got out of the U-Haul truck, and headed for the main entrance at 11:15, just before the weekday lunch crowd. I was counting on being recognized since I was a businessman in a former life. We wanted everyone to know I was back. As I took a seat and picked up my menu, I noticed several people looking at me and using their cell phones. A server brought my coffee and creamer and asked if I was ready to order. Is Wednesday's special of meatloaf, baked beans, and garlic mashed potatoes available? I asked. How do you know about that? The server inquired. It's for regular customers and not advertised. Tell Jack that Art wants brown gravy and fried onions with the meatloaf, I said. The waitress looked at me like I was crazy. I stood up and said, Never mind, I'll tell him myself. I walked through the swinging doors into the kitchen, with the server following and shouting my order. Jack turned and looked at me. You dumbass, Jack said with a smirk. You're a few weeks early. Welcome back, old friend. Susan, bring Art's coffee over here so we can catch up while he eats. Jack, the son of the original owner, never changed the name. We'd been friends most of our lives. We chatted until just before rush hour. He asked a staff member to get his wife to join us, giving us a chance to talk about important things. Art, you should know that after you left, the wife ended her friendship with Willa and Tammy for good. She didn't like what they did or said about you and the kids. Jack, a few things are about to happen. Last night, there was supposed to be an arrest that, if things go right, will trigger several events like a row of dominoes, I explained. Connie's husband, Peter, works with me. That's why I came back early. Jack looked at me seriously and said, He's a damn good cop and an honest man. He put 2 of our former city council members in jail last year for corruption. You'll have to tell me more later. There are too many big ears here. We saw Sasha pull into the parking lot. She looked good. I sat down and waited for her to come in, knowing she'd see me from behind and not suspect anything was wrong. "Jack, what happened?" Susan asked. "It was important," Sasha said. When she saw me, I stood up and turned to her. Sasha, my little sister, had lost her temper. Her older, meaner brother was home. I hugged her tightly like it was just yesterday. It took her a few minutes to calm down. Jack asked the kitchen staff to leave us alone for a few minutes. "Do Mom and Dad know you're back?" Sasha asked. "No, and it's best if we keep it a secret for a few days," I replied. "Are you here because Willa was taken into custody last night?" my sister asked. "Yes, and it's going to get worse before it gets better," I said. "Once I settle in, I'll be under police protection. The police are now looking at my former lawyer's pass away with new eyes, believing it's connected to the arson attack on his office." Jack and Sasha's expressions spoke for themselves. It was well known that the district attorney, appointed 3 years ago, was trying to resolve many unsolved cases. "You're a decoy to draw someone out," Jack said quietly. "If this is correct, the arson, liquidation, and several other crimes will be solved in the next few days," I replied. "This was all done to force me back to the city. Willa's arrest and my sudden return will disrupt a carefully planned conspiracy." "What's behind all this?" Jack asked. "A $2 million insurance policy with double indemnity on accidental pass away," I said. "Insured on me." My sister said, as we walked out of the restaurant to my rental truck. We were chatting when we noticed Tammy pulling up beside us. "Where are you staying?" my sister whispered. "At the Grand Dame's house. I'll be moving her stuff to the new house," I said. She wanted to be away from whatever was about to happen. Josie left town. "Why?" Sasha asked. "She wants to be near her granddaughter and our 2 sons," I answered with a smile. "Jody and I have been together for over 5 years. We have 2 boys who recently turned 3 and 4. My sister was in complete shock. "How did you and Jody end up together?" "Josie and I stayed in touch the whole time," I explained. "When Jody needed help leaving a failed marriage, her grandmother called me. I moved her to my place. We believe her ex caused my lawyer's pass away and the fire at his office." "Do Tammy and Willa know you're aware of what's happening?" asked Sasha. "No, but they'll find out soon enough when they start making their moves," I replied as Tammy approached us. "Art, I need you to drop part of your lawsuit against us," Tammy said. "The district attorney will charge Willa within 48 hours. Unfortunately, my attorney says we can't do that because Willa filed a new divorce petition claiming desertion, abandonment of the child, and back child support," I said. "Until the court rules on her claims, everything has to stay as it is." "You can't say that. How will we bail her out with no assets?" Tammy asked. "You have a court order freezing everything?" "Maybe your father could help by putting up his house as collateral," I suggested. "After all, you're both his daughters." Tammy turned and walked away, disappointed. "Willa and Tammy's father has nothing to do with them," Sasha said. "Not since he found out about Seth's true origins. He says they turned out just as bad as their mother." That brought a smile to my face. Finished with that, I got in the U-Haul and drove toward Josie's house, stopping to pick up packing materials. 3 hours later, I was backing into Josie's driveway. Using the large mirror, I parked close to the garage door. Once outside, I locked up before entering the house. I checked to make sure nothing had been touched inside. Josie said she left the curtains open, but they were closed. I texted Peter to ask if he had closed them. He replied that police officers in the house might have done it. Knowing this, I unlocked the front door and went inside. "Mr. Racine," the officer said, holding out a cell phone. "Peter Edwards wants to speak with you." "Hi, Peter," I said. "Looks like those who need to know." "No. Tammy talked to me at the burger place after I finished my long lunch. She wanted me to lift the lien on her sister's assets, and I refused." "I heard that," Peter said. "We taped Willa and Tammy discussing their plans. Jody's ex, Brad Press, came up a lot. Willa told Tammy to let him know that you know where Jody is. That should motivate him to do what we need. Our hunch was right because Brad showed up not an hour later. Willa told him where you were staying. Our informant, who was arrested today, told her you were back to move Josie," Peter said. When Brad asked where, Willa said to her granddaughter, Jody's house. A few minutes later, I saw the garage door open. Climbing into the van, I pulled out bundles of cardboard boxes and started packing up the house. At 6:30 p.m., the pizza from Papa John's arrived. When the delivery driver knocked, I opened the door. He asked if I was moving. I said no, just helping a friend. Brad made his move around 11 p.m. Using a tire iron, he picked the front door lock and slipped inside. Seeing a light in the kitchen, he headed there, pulling a 9mm pistol from under his shirt. He found me sitting there drinking coffee. "Hey, Art," Brad said. "Willa and Tammy say hi. I'm here to find out where Jody is so I can visit her." "Sorry, but I'd never tell my lawyer's eliminator or the man who burned his office," I replied. "Before you eliminate me, because we both know you will, how much were you promised from the insurance settlement?" "What makes you think I did it?" he asked, taking the bait. "Because you seem like someone they could manipulate into doing their dirty work. So how much of the $4 million on the accidental pass-away policy did they promise you?" $4 million? They told me it was only $750,000, he said. I laughed and said, "Did you know Seth is actually the son of Tammy's first husband?" His face turned white. "George and I have been manipulated and used by both twins for years. My attorney, working on my divorce, sued George and Tammy for everything they had." Brad's face went white. "That's why I knew Willa suing me for desertion and back child support was a scam," I said. "The divorce was finalized and just needed her signature. She manipulated me into coming back. That's when I put it all together. You're just another pawn they played. So ask yourself, what are their plans for you? My divorce only delayed their plan to eliminate me. You eliminating my lawyer put their original plan back in motion. You have a chance to set them back for years knowing them as we do. What does your gut tell you? It's hard to watch a fool realize he's expendable once he's no longer needed." "I'm screwed either way," Brad said. "The fact that your lawyer lost control of his car and hit a tree at 70 miles an hour is manslaughter. Manslaughter would get me life. You could get 5 to 10 for manslaughter, but liquidation is life. When I'm dead, they can claim you acted out of rage over Jody and didn't know what you were doing. Did they set you up to be a scapegoat? Most accidental pass-away policies don't cover liquidation. If you were in my shoes, what would you do?" asked Brad. "You'd make a deal, turn in state's evidence, and hope your cooperation is taken into account. That way you'd get revenge on those planning to take you out," I said. Brad put the weapon on the table and said, "Call the police." I said, "Brad, turn around. They're standing right behind you." Connie watched her husband on the phone, wondering what was wrong. Peter had told her that her father was at Josie's. A late call on his cell phone woke them both up. While he was talking, she put the kettle on to make hot chocolate for them. When Peter hung up the phone, he was smiling. "Your father surprised us all tonight." He talked Brad out of it and basically forced him to confess everything. The undercover cops videotaped the whole thing. Connie froze with surprise. "How did my father do that?" "He told Brad some facts he didn't know, like the truth about Seth's origins," Peter said. "I think your father convinced Brad that the insurance policy wouldn't pay out for liquidation. That was the deciding factor. Even I don't know if that's true, but it created enough doubt for Brad to accept the consequences of a lesser offense instead of life without parole. Aunt Josie always said your dad was a quick thinker, but this was unexpected." "What does this mean for my mom and sister?" asked Connie. "If Brad agrees to testify against them in court, they'll both be charged with arson, manslaughter, and at least attempted liquidation of your father," said Peter. Connie picked up her cell phone and called Jody to let her know. They made a plan. Josie would watch the kids for a few days because Jody was going to the airport. Connie would meet her when she got a text with her arrival time. After finishing the call, she explained everything to her sister. By then, Peter had dressed and was heading to the station to get Brad's signed statement before the night ended. I didn't wake up until 8 in the morning. The first thing I did was call Jack to get the front door fixed. He said he knew someone, and within half an hour they were there. The door was replaced, new trim and lock installed. The gentleman was just finishing when my daughter Connie drove up with Jody. Jody jumped out of the car and ran to me, tears streaming down her face. In that moment, I realized how much she had been through. "Brad was taken into custody last night," I said. "He surrendered to the police protecting me. I was never in any real danger." "If that was the case, why didn't you call me?" Jody said. "Why did I have to hear about it from Connie?" "It was almost 2 in the morning when the police cleared out," I answered honestly. "I figured I'd call you today." I put my arm around my wife and pulled her close. "I promise I will never put myself in that kind of danger again." As soon as the repairman finished, we locked the car, put her luggage away, and went to my brother's restaurant to eat. There, we were met by Karen, Sasha, and my parents. Jack's staff had to move 2 tables so we could all sit together. Jody was warmly greeted by everyone. Our breakfast, when it arrived, was excellent. Jack was so excited about what had happened that we ate it all. My parents were thrilled to learn that Jody and I had 2 sons named Carson and Hunter, after both my grandfathers. They looked through all the pictures of our children and us that Jody had saved on her cell phone. My daughters opened up and told them about discovering me with Josie. We were still there when Peter joined us. I noticed he looked tired. "Willa and Tammy are in custody now," Peter said. "Brad has confessed to everything, including his initial plan to eliminate his father. He'll be charged with arson and manslaughter when he testifies in the witch trials. Tammy and Willa face 3 counts of grand larceny, 2 counts of conspiracy to commit liquidation, and fraud. The district attorney is meeting with the divorce judge who handled your father's case to expedite the finalization of your divorce." "Peter, are you saying that Art and I can finally get married?" asked Jody, trying to process what she had heard. "The DA took the papers to the judge," Peter explained, "along with Dad's original divorce papers. He hopes the judge, being fully informed, will waive Willa's signature requirement, the waiting period, and issue the divorce certificate." "Jody," I said, "I think I'd better buy you a proper engagement ring today and finally propose." Everyone murmured at my remark. Tears welled up in Jody's eyes. She had always believed we would do it, but this was something she hadn't expected. Before we left, Mom and Dad made us promise to come over for dinner. Jody and I busied ourselves packing until about 5:30. Then we headed to my parents' house for dinner. Mom and Dad had a lot of questions. Jody shared how I had saved her from a failed marriage, thanks to her grandmother. Then she talked about getting her first job and where it led. We were still enjoying their company when Peter and Connie arrived with my divorce certificate. It was good to know that I was now free. When Jody had a chance to talk, she bragged about our children and our life together. My mom said, "We should have a wedding before you both get back." That's when my father got Peter's attention, grabbing a glass of fresh beer each. We followed him to the den because we couldn't get a word in edgewise. When word got out that Tammy had been arrested, people started calling with more information. Half of the DA's staff had to help us. Turns out what we knew was just scratching the surface of what Tammy and Willa were up to. Now it looks like the mayor will go down with them. "And what's going to happen to Willa's common-law husband?" I asked out of curiosity. "How involved was he in all of this?" "He'll probably be disbarred, but he'll be involved in raising their children. Nothing we've found links him to the witches," Peter said. "Has anyone notified Aunt Josie?" Connie asked. "Jody's dad wears a size 6.5 ring, in case you were wondering." A few minutes later, Peter and I were on our way to the mall, where he bought Connie a set of Knowing Jody's Taste, and I bought a 3-ring engagement set. When we returned, we were pleased to find that they didn't know we had left. I was on the phone with Josie when Karen and her boyfriend showed up. The house was full, and we all moved into the living room. The men had to bring chairs from the kitchen. Dad told Jody to sit in his chair. This let my mom know something was up, so she watched the scene with eagle eyes. There was silence in the room as I walked over and knelt down to ask my common-law spouse to legally become my wife. I caught her off guard, of course. She said yes. The party went on. My father proudly said, "I need to catch up on almost 7 years of drinking with my son and Jody. And Art, your engagement is the best way to start." Peter had to drive Jody and me back to Josie's. A lot of stress and worry were relieved. Friday, we went to City Hall to pick up our license. Jody found out she could fit into Connie's wedding dress. Jack agreed to be my best man. Karen became Jody's maid of honor. The DA agreed to perform the ceremony. I had to buy a suit at Macy's. There was no way my future wife was going to let me marry her in blue jeans. On Sunday afternoon, in my parents' backyard, with the entire family present, we said our vows to everyone's admiration. Even the twins' father was there. We told everyone we didn't want any gifts, but my former father-in-law handed me an envelope. "Colin, this is not a wedding gift. It's your early inheritance," he said with a smile. "The rest of my estate will go to your daughters." I slipped the envelope into my suit and forgot about it for the rest of the day. Everyone videotaped the ceremony and texted it to Aunt Josie. Someone asked where we were going on our honeymoon. Jody's response was, "After everything we've been through, once Grandma gets settled in the new house, our honeymoon will be a week in Florida and a week in California, enjoying Disney with the kids. Because without family, we wouldn't be where we are today." Before we headed home the next day, I handed Jody an envelope. Inside was a bank promissory note for $100,000 with a note. It read, "Thank you for helping to fix karma. I always thought the twins liquidated their mother." I will enjoy watching them get the reward they deserve for their deeds, and so will my granddaughters. Jody put the envelope in her purse without saying anything to anyone. After hugging my daughters and parents, Jody and I climbed into the U-Haul. We drove home, finally free of the past.